And when you live in a dense space and there's a lot of it, that's maybe the one kind of urgency that I'm down to buy into, is this urgency of like I want to be in my own life. You know, I want to be present, and I want to be soaking up the world that's around me.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean every day all the time, but
which like
go for a walk. That's what I mean.
Yeah, which reminds me of like, you don't know what you don't know.
You don't know what you don't know. And sometimes all you got to do is like knock on a door or learn one new word, and then like a whole existence opens up. And like,
I Am Consciously Curious, a podcast for those that are searching for meaning and fulfillment in their lives. My name is Victor Chan, and I'm on a mission to find out why people do what they do. I've interviewed white collar to blue collar, entrepreneurs to passion projects, and life is just too short to not produce meaningful work. Thanks for tuning in. Steph Krim, welcome to the show.
Hi.
We're going. We are recording.
Cool.
I feel like I've stumbled on your work and your vending machines prior to reaching out, but I don't know. But in the articles that I read, you didn't list Mars Brewing as one of the places.
Those aren't my machines. But
that's the first time I noticed an odd vending machine.
Yeah, so that's a business, Marsis, and they actually, I don't want to speak too much for
on behalf
them,
of Mars,
but I believe that they were inspired by Carrie, who does magic box vending in Portland and Las Vegas. So I think that like, I'm not surprised that there are other people.
No.
And my dreamy dream is that we all sort of chit chat about it, because it's such a niche.
There's a lot of opportunity.
Yeah, it's such a niche thing. And I also think there's so much space, and everybody's machines are different, everybody's concept. So I have this, I think every now and then people, I mean, candidly, they sort of assume a competitiveness that just experientially doesn't exist. It's not like we're two restaurants next door to each other that are pulling from the same neighbor. You know, it's like they're curating their own machine. And the thing that I hear the most is that they have incredible mystery bags. I'm like, I want to go check. Like, I'm my own target market, you know, like I am a vending machine girly. Like, I want to go see the machines. So, yeah.
I think when you're starting something, if you come from a simple place of selfishness of like, what would you use this? Would you experience this? And that's a good place to start.
You gotta like something that you're gonna put your time into, and that doesn't necessarily mean like love your job but you gotta get something from it. We all have limited time, and in a lot of ways, I think that's the resource that we're all so protective of, or that we all try to protect. And I think even if you don't wake up every day like singing that you get to do taxes professionally or whatever, like there has to be some satisfaction or some joy that makes it so you can wake up and keep putting your energy in.
I had a friend who wanted to distribute his cold brew in vending machines, but he's coming from the passive income perspective,
which is a tough approach to anything. I think that anybody who is beginning any venture with the goal of low input, low energy.
Yeah, you got to scale.
That can be a long-term goal for sure.
Yeah.
Like you can set out and say, I don't want to be working 80-hour weeks. So I'm going to pick something that I think in the long term can allow me to have a lot of free time.
Yeah.
But I think even your simplest thing, like even people talk about these evergreen content, publish an ebook or what, like you still have to make the thing. You still have to get the word out. Like you still have to show up for all of that.
Yeah.
And I think, to start out and just say like, this is going to be a lot of managing expectations, you know, like I love to say this is going to be the hardest thing I've ever done. And then if it's like the second hardest thing I've ever done, I'm like, wow, that was incredibly easy.
Yeah. But, and to add to the passive income perspective from it, you've added on this creativeness, this collaborativeness to it. You're in iconic places like the Cultural Center.
I feel very lucky.
Some iconic restaurants like Rest in Peace Metropolitan. I think they're making a comeback through another vessel, but breweries that can be iconic to the beer scene as well. I don't know. It's very interesting how you've built this.
Lucky and also shameless.
Okay.
Yeah. Like I think that I remember hearing about manifesting when I was like in high school, and everybody was eye rolling about it sort of fairly, because I think that the initial read was like, you fall asleep picturing your favorite sneakers and you wake up and the sneakers are there next to
Oh,
you.
okay.
And it's like, that's not how it works.
It's the sneaker fairy.
Yeah. Like, that's just not, that's not really what it, but a confirmation bias. It's just another way to talk about confirmation bias. It's like if I try to speak the thing that I want to be true, and sometimes that means that I'm talking ahead of where I'm at. Sometimes it means that I'm saying, oh, I'm somebody that wakes up and takes 10 minutes in the morning to check in with myself. But like, do I actually do that every single day? No, but I want to believe that about myself. And the more that I believe that about myself, the more likely I am to show up to that. So I think that for me, Good Things Vending, people are like, when did it start? I say 2018, but from 2018 to 2019, there was nothing concrete that I could have shown you. Mm-hmm. But in some ways, that was the most pivotal year, because that was the year that I was talking to everybody. That was the year that I had the right conversation with the right person at the right time, but not because I just hit the nail. It was because I was having every conversation that I could have, and one of them ended up being potent in one way.
Yes.
Got me into the cultural center.
Okay.
Which I think added a kind of like legitimacy
This credibility,
to the project.
But prior to having those conversations, you've probably had this thought lingering for a while, kind of like knocking on the inside. And the articles have said that you fell in love with vending machines on these trips to Japan as well. But I'm sure it wasn't that prevalent back in the day, but if you were to make a callback, like, oh, I guess it did make sense. Like, looking back.
I mean, that's everything's in retrospect.
Yeah.
Like, I get asked again and again to sort of tell this like origin story, but like, we're all on a path. We're all on like a learning journey, and you wake up. And I was listening on the way here to somebody talking about the idea that small things make big changes. Like, we all know that intuitively. We all know that like, did you snooze your alarm this morning? Like, that one choice, the butterfly effect, it could just send your life on a totally, and I think there's this.
Well, it's overwhelming when you want to try to change your life, but what if you changed your day?
Yeah. And I think that that's sort of the reality for me, is that now I go back and I tell a story. I tell a story that I've architected out of the pieces that make the most sense.
That's honest.
But the truth of it is, like, I don't tell the story of every no I got, but a lot of the no's were more valuable than the yeses. And like, I don't tell the story of all the days I came home kind of hating my job, because that was really vital in deciding to do something scary, was realizing I wasn't super happy where I was at. So I didn't necessarily have as much to risk. Yeah,
exactly.
But yeah, I do. The narrative now sort of tracks back to Japan, but I think that that's sort of the seed. I think that that's like, I was lonely. I was traveling with my parents for work, and just like a little American girl in Japan. Had like converted my $50 to yen.
I have not been, but I know it's like the land of vending machines. You can get almost anything in a vending machine.
So, such an unbelievable place for so many reasons. Like the warmth, the friendliness, the approach to kids. Like, I was a kid, but I just felt, not in every space, but in a lot of spaces, I was sort of celebrated for my joy, for my silliness, for my curiosity, and then there were these vending machines. Then there was this, like, I'm moving through this world where I don't speak the language, and I'm moving with my parents who are there for business, and there weren't a lot of specific invites that felt like they were for me. And the vending machines were just always there. We'd be sitting, waiting at a bus stop, and I'd turn around and there's a vending machine. So like, you're a kid, you go over, you check out the buttons. There's buttons to press. I'm going to press the buttons. And most of them were beverage machines, but not exclusively. And I just think I felt so. It was it's such a personal exchange.
Is it odd to say, like, you felt seen by the vending machines?
Seen by the vending machines. I felt like they were my quiet friends. I felt like, it's the same way that, like, if you live in a house where there's like a bush that you anthropomorphize as a kid, or you have one stuffed animal, like, they just sort of turned into these characters that were there with me no matter where we were, no matter what city we were in, no matter how quickly we had to move because it was work. They were there to sort of greet me and like be a little interim in a quiet moment. But it wasn't until much later that got connected. It was actually, my father grew up in New York. He was from Queens, New York. And I don't hear a ton of stories about his life. But I was listening to a podcast about Horn and Hard Art, the old automat eatery. They would take these old Art Deco food halls and they would make these cubbies that you would put a nickel, a penny, a quarter in, and you would get hot food piece by piece. So you would get, 10 cents for your potatoes, 15 cents for your steak. You'd put it on a tray. There were no servers. Maybe people would come to clear, but it was a communal food hall. And it was pre-fast food. And fast food sort of killed the automat industry in this way. But before fast food, it was the main place to go and eat. If you lived in New York and you're running around working, you got a lunch hour. Most people went home. Maybe you brought your lunch. This was like the first experience of a place to go. Like really incredible. And people have tried to bring it back. I know local company Wow Bao did like some proprietary automat technology that maybe they sold, but fast food came around and kind of wiped them out. But the thing that was so specific about it and that I was really struck by was all the human hands involved. I was really amazed by automation as a way to create a through point for these people who are cooking fresh food. They are currently cooking, like you are eating potatoes that have been cooked within the last hour, probably in New Jersey, and then driven over here and put into this cubby. And now you're eating this fresh food and you're sitting down next to somebody who works 2 buildings away from you that you may not have had a reason. But it's all
So there was still a lot of soul in that automation.
So much soul. And I think that's what I see in vending machines. I think best case scenario, I see a water cooler moment. I see the meet cute in the movie. Like there's a reason.
But not all vending machines. Your vending machines.
I think all vending machines kind of.
Really? I mean, it's like when there's like just, potato chips that you can find anywhere else. Like that's what I mean by soulless. I'm sure there's soul in them. But like when you get stopped in your tracks and something in the machine, if not several things in the machine, are just gauging your interest and your curiosity and just like, I want to know more about that.
It's definitely more of a stopper. Like I definitely think my machines are more of an attention grabber. I think functionally vending machines serve a role. Like you're in a waiting room at a hospital and everybody's in their own little bubble. And then you have this one row of vending machines and it's this one moment where people walk up and they might interact with each other.
You're right.
They might have a small conflict. They might there is this, it's a happening. It's like, it's, I think that's what I think about the water cooler is it's this moment where you break out of your individual bubble. And even though you have this individual exchange, I think it's familiarity, the simplicity of its mechanism. I think there's a reason why our cultural understanding of a vending machine is that it jams. And it's because if you look at media, it's used so often as the reason that 2 people start talking to each other.
I didn't think about it. Yeah, you're right.
And I think that's true with snack vending machines, and I hope it's even more true with good things vending machines. But I think that they come naturally with some component of like service and also connection.
Is this something that you reflected on, like looking back, or something that you wanted to implement?
I think because of my own experience with the machines, I think I always knew that there was like something beyond just the buy. That there's this personal moment of
more
sort
than
of window shopping and
Yeah.
there's this excitement of button pressing and this sort of magic of the coils moving. But yeah, I definitely think in retrospect, I've like put a lot more language behind it.
Yeah.
I think a lot about vending in relationship
I would
to
have
where
never
we're
thought.
at right now. Yeah, I think it's a weird moment. We're like in a weird moment. I'm watching stores close. I'm watching.
Well, people are scared about how automated things are getting, but there is still. So when you collaborate with other artists and makers, and you put some of their creations in this machine, that's what I see. I see what I've learned through this podcast. It's more than a good or a service. There's soul behind this good and service, and like you're displaying that in a variety of forms inside this machine.
I think of it as like an invite. It's like an invite all around. Like the whole project has been an invite for me to engage with people that I am impressed. I know it's like we all are just trying to find the reason to like have the conversations we want to have. That's exactly what it is. And I think that it's an invite to the artists because there's restrictions, size restrictions, price restrictions. So it's like an invite to work within those constraints. I also think that it's an invite for the shopper, for the person who's looking at the machine. Maybe you just want the dice or the notebook and to walk away. But best case scenario, in my dream world, you walk up and you see something that speaks to you so specifically. Maybe it's a tufted rug of an egg and you like need a coaster and you're obsessed with eggs. Now you're not just connected to that object, you're connected to the artist that made that object. And that person lives in the city. So now you might see that person's work again out in the world. They'll have their business card or their logo on the packaging. Now you carry the knowledge of that person's work into this community. And because of the way that like this beautiful city works, it'll probably show up again.
Damn.
And that's like a real joy. I think a lot about rhyming. I think a lot about how like Chicago has a flavor, a taste, a vibe, a feeling, a visual, and like.
What do you mean by rhyming? Like musically rhyming, or like butterfly effect rhyming?
Like butterfly.
Yeah.
Like I think about. My therapist has let me know that this is like specific to the way that my brain works, but I'll try to. I think that. Have you ever seen an object and thought of a person that you care about?
Sure.
Not just because like that friend loves dogs and it's a dog object, but because there was something inherently about that object that made you think like, oh, if I was standing next to this friend, they would freak out about this thing. Like this would so speak to them.
Yeah.
I think a lot of things have that kind of connectivity. So sometimes when I'm looking for muralists for a particular location, I'm trying to find that rhyme. I'm trying to find that connection. When an artist proposes a piece of artwork and says, oh, I want to vend this item, I'm trying to find the location that I think will sort of like resonate most with their work, which ends up feeling like a rhyme. It ends up feeling like this sort of harmony between non-connected
I try to do that with guests. You know, it's just
100%.
like when friends from your other circles meet and there's this Venn diagram moment.
Yes. I just think there's something deeply satisfying. I get a feeling from that, and I think I'm seeking that out kind of all the time.
Well, it's very fulfilling. You're adding to society. You're improving other people's experience.
Making sense of a thing that feels senseless sometimes. Making connection, putting pattern or putting shape, container, like understanding towards a thing that we're all just sort of like rolling downhill on.
Wow.
It's the feeling of saying to somebody, I heard a song the other day that I think you're really going to like, and playing it for them and watching them love that song. Yeah. That for me is like such a profound feeling.
That's a gift. If you can empathize that much, that deeply with someone.
Yeah. I think it's really loving. I think it's like, and I think for me, the vending machine feels like on a good day, trying to create one thing that has a decent chance at doing that for a large amount of people. Mm-hmm. Like the idea isn't to curate specifically for me or you or whoever. It's to create an exciting box that makes you, on a sort of pulled back scale, kind of question what you might bump into in the world. Open up the sense of possibility. Like you walk around a corner, you don't know what you're going to find. I think we all got to have that inside of us a little bit to keep moving. The
spontaneity,
the
surprise and delight. Yeah.
So I think some of it is that, and then I think on like the zoomed in scale, like, okay, I catch you on the big machine, you turn the corner, you see a big painted vending machine, you feel a little bit of something, you walk up closer. Then I think upon walking up closer, the hope is that I'll catch you on something inside. Like, not every item is for every person. Yeah. Not assuming that there's one person who's going to want every single thing. And I don't even necessarily know who the audience is all the time. Sometimes I'm shocked.
That's what I mean. It's like,
move.
I guess like it's you're probably finding inspiration in all types of places. And at this point in time, like, are you trying to imagine a demographic, or are you still shopping for yourself? Like,
I think it's about being open for me. Like, I actually don't do a ton of curating with the machine. The biggest issue right now is that the interest and capacity do not exactly match up. Like, it's me and Dave and 8 vending machines, and I wish that we could like answer every question and vend every item with the sort of urgency that would match, I think, the excitement and the passion.
I see.
But it's hard. That's hard, and that's been one of the big challenges to manage. But I do think I'm not curating for me, and I'm not curating. I am, if it fits in the machine physically, if it will physically vend, if it is within the price range, and if I believe it fits in a location. That's sort of the most curating that I'll do. I try to stay away from certain things, like we don't go too heavy into anything like really pop culture. It tries to have try to have things that feel recognizable as a product of the person who made them, and as part of their production. But yeah, there's not a ton of limitations. So I'll try just about anything. Like when goods come in, I'll try anything on consignment. That's been a great thing that's sort of freed me up to bring the stakes down on decision making.
And to be extra clear, there's no money exchange in the beginning.
In the beginning, yeah. So once we've proved that an item vends well, it's 60-40 in favor of the artist. Once we've proved that an item vends well, I'll like place larger orders. Sometimes we'll do wholesale. But the goal is variety, rotation, keeping the door open, having as many artists participate as possible. And in order to do that and have it not be that my taste or feeling stops something from entering the machine that might really have an audience, it's sort of just like, does it work? Will it physically work? If it will physically work, and if it doesn't like actively break a rule or an agreement that we have with a location, then I'll try it in any machine. I'll try anything in any machine for the most part. Because then if it doesn't work, I come back and I'll say, hey, we gave it, a month in this machine. I'll try it in another machine, but I wanted to revisit. I think maybe it's the packaging. I think maybe people aren't sure exactly what they're buying. What if we add a sticker? Like the goal is to sort of workshop it until it works. But
that was my favorite class in my MBA program that I never finished, but consumer behavior is just like figuring out why,
I think I could benefit from
like
that
looking
class.
at packaging, right? It's just like, why is someone making the decision they're making?
I could just talk about that for hours. What was the?
But you get to have these discussions with the makers.
Is there like a specific ethos in that world? Is there like a prevailing best practice in the consumer behavior world?
There's so many attributes to it. I mean, it just simply shelf space, right? It's just like where on the shelf, is it eye level?
Totally.
Is it below?
Think about that all the time.
Yeah.
And we see it. Dave and I will do these little tests. We'll like take a product that hasn't been moving, something that we think really is interesting and cool and maybe it's just the eyes.
Yeah, when you're looking at it, yeah.
Yeah.
But in the plethora.
So sometimes it's about moving its physical location. Sometimes it's about adding a sticker.
Yeah.
That says these are one-offs, or inside of this the photos are actually stickers, or because you can't, the block of the glass in front of you, nobody can touch anything.
There is that surprise, that element of surprise and some people like that, and some people like really want to know what they're getting.
I actually think that's like maybe one of the most eye-opening things about this whole process is like the love of a surprise.
Yeah.
The machine as an oracle, the machine as a decision maker, like. Mystery socks have been our best-selling item since day one, which, if I'm being fully honest, is a little bit the bane of my existence, because I just am hunting for socks all the time.
So this isn't Mystery Socks is not a brand. You are finding interesting socks to
like in the checkout aisle of like Joanne Fabric. Like I'm just like hunting for like weird novelty socks all the time. The machine is split goods because the artist goods sort of roll in based off of when folks are done. I try not to be too deadline heavy, although I am recognizing that for some folks, deadlines are really valuable. So trying to create a system that
constraints can be helpful.
Work for both. But the idea with the project was sort of like door is open. We don't necessarily know when a row is going to empty out and when we'll have space for new goods. And maybe you don't exactly know when your goods are going to get done. But when your goods are done, send them our way. And the next time a row opens up, we'll plop them in. And that kind of flexibility has really been valuable and only works in conjunction with the other things that we stock in the machine. So the vintage novelty stuff, the practical items, that allows us to have this rotation of artist goods. If somebody's artist good sells out and somebody else hasn't turned their new item in, well, we'll plug in some Fern Gully trading card packs for a week and then pull those out and put the new thing in.
Have you had to find yourself saying no, or maybe not at this time?
I really struggle with that. I struggle because I think that I always want to say a no like a yes.
Yeah.
I was talking about this with my cousin David the other day, who does big business stuff, and he's like really professional, and he's very good at like drawing lines and like what. I think he comes across as like maybe not so, like I think people don't get to see how nice he is because he has to do this sort of like big business, whatever. And I don't want to do that thing. But every now and then he sort of fairly is like, but you have to be able to advocate for this like baby. Your business is in a lot of ways a living thing. And he offered some language up that I'm going to try to start using, which is essentially like, thank you so much for bringing that idea.
Yeah.
I'm really excited to see it. Give me a minute to figure out how that fits into what we're doing for good things. But please don't stop showing me what you're working on like I am. Because I get so afraid about shutting down people's excitement and their creativity.
I feel the same way about podcast guests.
Yeah.
Sometimes I just don't have the curiosity right off the bat. Whereas like I saw your stuff and I'm like, oh, I am so curious about this.
High compliments.
But it's just not the case all the time. But I do this for selfish reasons. Like I follow wherever my curiosity goes, and sometimes it's just not there immediately.
Yeah.
But I've been phrasing it like that too.
Yeah, just trying to sort of, because I think one of the things that and maybe they're connected. Like one of the things that I struggle with also now is the perception that I am receiving that like I know what I'm doing, that I'm cool, I'm like, I sort of think that it's the doubling down on my weird and doubling down on my not knowing that make me interesting at all. So to be celebrated for the end result, when the thing that I'm the proudest of is like all of the work and all the connections, and it's an interesting disconnect. And I'm worried that if somebody says, what do you think of my idea? And I say, I don't love that idea, that it has this weight now that is just totally
who am I to say
inappropriate.
That?
Like it doesn't matter.
How you say something also matters, right?
Yeah. So I think trying to figure out a way to sort of like never
close the door.
Put a roadblock up to somebody's excitement, but also to create some boundaries and try and like keep myself. But it's a learning curve, I don't.
Yeah.
All of this was sort of built one piece at a time, and that means a lot of times you got to go back and adjust a previous piece because it wasn't built off of like where we're sitting now. I think the hardest part for me is the artist. Like I take really seriously the role of communicating. Such a vulnerable thing to choose to gamble on yourself, and artists are full businesses. They're doing their own taxes and their own marketing. And they're like,
there's so much more to just being an artist.
The weight of waking up and knowing that you're, not only are you responsible for like making the thing that got you there in the first place, but also
you need eyeballs on it.
You have to keep it alive.
How much is it worth?
You got to water it. You got to feed it. You got to stoke it. Like that's so intense. Every day you got to wake up and do that. Like that's crazy. I have to say a lot of no's to locations, and that's tough.
No, really?
Oh my God, yeah. Because we have really low capacity.
So, like people like want your businesses want your machines.
Yeah. Which makes, I feel like it's me saying like, oh, more people want us than we get, but it's actually, it's a source of some anxiety for me because I think all the time about the urgency mechanism that like exists in the world right now, this like opportunity cost. You got to grab everything that's available to you.
Yeah.
It's like
this FOMO. Yeah.
Like money falls from the sky. It's like not about making sure everybody has what they need. It's about grabbing the biggest pile.
Sure.
Everybody, if they have it, then it's not yours. And I think in having this business be more successful than I anticipated, more opportunity has shown up at every point than I'm really equipped to capitalize on, which means that I've had to say no. And that's a shift. Like at the beginning of the business, I'm receiving all these no's and I'm saying yes to everything and I'm begging I'm like, hear me, see this idea.
Point. Yeah.
And then at some point, enough people are excited about it.
Yep.
What, in my case, like one video goes viral,
yep.
the sort of general perception of the business changes. And now I'm being put in the position of having people walk up with all their excitement and all of their joy. And I'm having to say, like, let's talk about it, but we have really low capacity. I think at this point, like the most machines that have happened in a year was 4. I think we're on track to do like 3-4 machines this year, but we probably have.
What do you, and when you say, what does that mean? So 4 new ones in the year?
Yeah, so each machine is produced specifically for the location that it lives in.
How does it, why? What?
Because it's the love letter.
And when I love that. When you say produced, you're talking about the mural on the outside of the machine as well as the curated inventory in the machine.
Yeah, the machine is sort of taken from being a standard snack vending machine to being a good things vending machine.
Truly, your babies.
They're babies.
Essentially.
They're babies. And they're collaborative babies. Like they're not babies.
Right.
Like I'm not.
No.
I couldn't paint like, you should see what I make. Like, I make because I love making with my hands, but I've always struggled to call myself an artist because surrounded by people that are as talented as the people that I'm surrounded by, the project is a community-based project because they fill in the gaps of what I'm not capable of doing. And it just is more interesting with more people and more brains and more talent. But basically the process is like a location reaches out or I reach out to a location and we sort of flirt with each other and we're like, hey, you seem to be interested in community and art and vending and like you vibe in a way that I enjoy. Like, let's chat. I'll go there. I'll see the space. We decide we're going to do a machine. Then two things start happening. I start sourcing a machine based off of the space that they have available. So if it's a big open brewery, I'm looking at a 5-wide machine. Those are the biggest ones. If it's maybe like a bar or a community space with a tighter, 4-wide or something else. And then I also start looking for a rhyme for muralists. I start sort of like rolling around in my brain. Okay, well, I walk through their place and it seems like they have a lot of like reds and blues and greens and more of this primary tone. And they have a lot of organic shapes and this and that. And I'll always ask in that first meeting for them to tell me what their visual necessities are. So are you like hard no pink in the whole building? Are you everything has to have a banana on it? Like whatever it is.
Yeah.
So then I can step back and from all the artist conversations that we've had, sort of try and pull together a presentation. A location's always welcome to pitch additional artists if they've worked with somebody before. But I require every location to look at least 3 artists that I'm presenting to them. I think some of it is just about, some of the process of this is just about the connection. It's not always about the output. Some of it is just about, I show you 3 artists, you pick one for the machine, and then 4 years later, you're looking to do a mural on the outside of your building. The chance that you're going to think about one of those 3 artists is like, like there's just this feeling, it's like we should all be meeting each other. We should all be seeing what we're doing. We mess up the system that doesn't serve us if we all are talking to each other first, like if we're all leaning on each other first. So I think some part of me is functioning under the hope that if all of these artists who are hustling away can be in front of these businesses that are also hustling away, that there'll be this like connection.
This mutual respect and then opportunity that arises from that.
It doesn't happen all the time, but like Alyssa Lowe, who painted the machine at Kaiser Tiger, a year later, Kaiser Tiger redid their whole outdoor patio, and Alyssa did this incredible mural.
She's a great muralist,
unbelievable.
Yeah. I haven't met her yet, but we've exchanged,
And like, wow, incredibly professional and just very lovely to work with. So she went and she did a mural on their garage door, which is this like big feature outside. And I cannot tell you how much joy I got from seeing this.
Yeah.
It felt like an evolution of this collaboration that we had done that then happened without I'm just like out in the world and I get to watch this thing exist now.
That's what you mean by rhyme.
That's what I mean by rhyme. It's like that rhyme was solid enough that when they needed to make another decision about their space, they were like, oh, this feels so good. This feels so in line with us, with what we're trying to...
You're setting the conditions for lightning to strike.
Yeah, that's the hope. Best case scenario. Not always that way. Some are definitely like louder than others, but I think it's all sort of floating around an idea that like magic... Like we all are, it's all sort of a magical thing to be.
It's this example that makes me believe that you can cultivate a sense of fulfillment in any vessel.
Any vessel. Any vessel. Because we're so product focused. Just where we're at sort of in our human evolution. Like we're very focused.
What if people put their services on a card that they can vend?
Well, there's a phenomenal machine. Man, I wish I could remember the details on it, but there's a machine somewhere that I get sent. One of the great joys of my life is that people send me all the time, text message, Instagram, email, pictures of vending machines that they've seen, articles about a vending machine. So somebody sent me one. It's a full philanthropic machine where every single item is like a piece of paper that says like a $250 support for this animal shelter, or like classes for a student at this college. And you literally are swiping your card at this vending machine and you're like vending this community care that you're sort of making a donation, but in the vending machine becomes this just vessel to have that exchange. And
wow,
I think vending machines, like to go back a little bit, like it's an intense thing to have like grown up. And to grow up, period.
Yes.
To grow up now, to grow up when we grew up, to feel things change rapidly. And I was a mall kid.
Yeah.
I
don't think there are mall kids anymore. I don't know.
It's maybe, but it's definitely different. Like I feel like you were a mall kid by default when I was growing up. And I think that one of the things that I've been struggling with is how much, as we invest in an online world, how much we de-invest from our shared space, our meet space. And I'm not an internet hater by any means. Like I just think there's questions, like there's a lot of questions that we haven't asked, and that means we're probably going to get answers along the way, and maybe we'll like some and maybe we won't, and we'll deal. But like as we de-invest from meet space, that there's this like there's this wanting that exists for all
That's
of
so
us.
interesting, yeah.
And I think I'm watching people open stores that then have to close because it's just not built to be, you have to compete with the entire pantheon of everything that's ever been available to human beings at your door in 24 hours. So it's like hard to get somebody to invest in the work and the labor of like always leaving your house when you got to buy something or whatever. But I think vending machines are this really interesting middle ground where you have this convenience element that the internet has always won on.
Yeah.
And also incredibly low overhead. It's not a whole store that you have to keep open. They can move, they're modifiable, they can exist anywhere. You can have many of them in the same space that don't compete with each other. If you have a snack machine and I have an art machine, somebody else has a toy machine, somebody else has a baby machine, we could all be in a row together and we could be, you know, offering stuff to the same audience. I just think right now people are so hungry for things here in the world that we can touch and feel and engage with, and that it's really hard to do that in a lot of the ways that we had traditionally done that. And that's why I think that there has been a little bit of an increase in interest in vending machines, because you can pick one up for a couple $1,000s on Craigslist and like roll the dice on something else.
How much do you have to what's your threshold for purchasing a machine? Like how unfixable can it be?
Well, I'm really lucky and I got Joe. So when people ask about vending machines, I always say, if you see vending machines in your community when you walk around, it means that there's a vending machine industry here. Find the people who work already in the vending machine industry, because they have been doing this for a long time. So my first machines came from Joe, but I didn't know what I was doing. So I was a little bit...
Is it naive?
I was like worried that I was going to get scammed.
Okay. So
I like swung my dick a little bit in like an unnecessary way, you know? Like I was just like... kind of gruff about it, because I was just like 28-year-old or whatever holding like $2,500.
Wow.
Like, are you gonna sell me a vending machine on the internet? So I felt really scammable. So I was...
You were trying to put up a wall.
Yeah,
I understand.
You can't scam me. I know what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And then after Joe, I went and I bought them from a place that shipped them, and it was just a much different experience, more expensive. I didn't like the machines as much.
Oh, wow.
I had to navigate some other stuff on my own because they weren't local. And I ended up back in Joe's arms. And when Joe and I met back up, he was like, I didn't like working with you the first time. And I was like, fair. That's actually really fair. And now we're best friends. Now he's like my family. He's like built in all that. But that's, you know, when we talk about fear and like mistakes and not knowing, like that was totally a product of me being deep in a not knowing.
When you've reflected on that with Joe, like did Joe share that he might have sensed some of that fear?
I think that I just came across as...
arrogant, or
I think I came across as like just unfriendly, just not warm, closed off, like maybe too much wheeling and dealing. Maybe I sort of removed the humanity from it and I was just trying to wheel and deal.
Transactional,
wheel and deal. Yeah, really transactional. But now what I know about Joe is like he's a softie and like, yeah, he's my buddy and it's just really different now. But what that's done for me is that it's changed my relationship to acquiring machines.
Okay.
Having somebody who's really knowledgeable, he could disassemble an entire AP snack shop down to its bolts and put the whole thing back together from bags. The man is a vending machine pantheon of knowledge. So I feel really lucky that I have him. But in general, like they're pretty robust. Old vending machines are old tech, so it's not this super integrated, a million different connections. It's pretty much just like a motherboard, and then that motherboard is connecting to the exact same mechanisms that work if you're feeding it manually.
So how hard is it to rewire it with a credit card?
Not.
Oh, that's amazing.
As long as it has the right motherboard, as long as it's new enough that the motherboard can talk the same language. But they make kits where you can modify them. Wow. So I'm all refurbished snack machines because I think, first of all, it's accessible. They're familiar. There's like a warmth that I feel towards those objects. But also, I just love taking this old machine that is going to like go and die in a landfill and giving it this whole big, beautiful new life. Joe's great at finding me machines that are like just what they need to be without being more.
Sure.
So that he now adds the credit card readers, but it's all stuff that you can learn to do.
Sure.
And they don't have a ton of issues because they're so robust. So when they go down in pretty minor ways. It's like, I can't tell you how often the solve is actually just a power cycle, like an unplug and a plug back in. You just need like the cache cleared or whatever. But, the light bulb has gone off every now and then. The connection sort of fritzes. We had to replace one keypad. But doing this for 5 years, it's like a pretty small amount of issues.
You test the object flowing through the machine like enough to where you've minimized the number of occurrences?
Yeah. That is a vital part of working with artists. Everybody, before I consider putting any goods in the machine, I have to test vend a sample, which I think a lot about like barriers to entry, like wanting to make it a really accessible thing. And I've struggled with that one. That's part of why I'm so excited to get a studio space, because I think in this dream world, there's been these like long back and forth with people trying to workshop their items. And I just can't wait to be able to say, I'm going to be in the studio these 3 days. Like, you want to come figure this out in person? Like, we'll get it vending and then we'll get it in machines. Sure. But that's been sort of a long process up until now, because there is a back and forth, and I do need to receive something and test it in the machine in order to make sure that it vends. At this point, I have a pretty good gauge on what will vend, I think.
Good.
It's like a little bit of a running joke that we'll be like out at a store and I'll get kind of lost in looking at an object, and like my partner will walk by and be like, "Hey, that looks vendable." Like, yeah, it does. You flirting with me? I think there's like something inside of me that sort of has like a gauge for it, but it is a really important part. And it's not like they never jam, but they jam a lot less than it looks like in the movies. And we have a good system for it. There's a QR code on the machine, there's cards behind the bar, and people are pretty understanding. Like, when something gets stuck, on the rare occasion that it does, they hit me up. I get it direct to my cell phone, and I just chat with them. It's like, sorry, like, oops, how much did you want that item? Like, should I have Dave try and pull it the next time that he's restocking, or do you just want me to refund you? Because I can do that too. Like, it feels pretty easy to solve. And what I've found is that, luckily, the target market of a project like this tends to be folks who...
Understanding. Yeah. They're not like shaking the machine like, oh man.
And also, everything is $20 and under.
Right.
And I think that keeping it low stakes, not that $20 is nothing, but just there is this sort of cap on the gamble. Yeah. We used to joke that it was like the vending machines feel like the arcade game you always win.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Like on occasion.
So, what did you study at SAIC?
Well, SAIC is really loose in its relationship to like declaring. Okay. But I definitely focused in photography and writing. Now that I reflect and build a new story around that reflection, I think I've always been a curatorial kid. Like, I took 2 classes that really blew my mind, and they both had to do with perception. They both had to do with like, the apple next to the red hat tells a different story than the apple next to the banana. You really change
the meaning.
You really like change the understanding of things based off of sort of what they're surrounded with. So I think about that a lot in the machine, like things in relationship to other things. And then the other class that I took, Matthew Goulash, best teacher I've ever had, he taught a class like about the ordinary, and I'm going to butcher some details here probably, but it was like Victor Shklovsky estrangement. It's this idea that like things are ordinary because you sort of stop perceiving them because they're like default in your environment.
Sure.
Like it's ordinary. It's not being perceived. Yeah. And that to elevate something from being ordinary to being extraordinary, it was really just an act of perception. And I think that those two lessons at school were actually the most valuable. It wasn't necessarily like the education in any type of art. It was the community, and it was like these 2 big moments of, well, like, what is it? What are these feelings, and what does it mean to? Yeah, I'm in it for joy. Like, I'm in it for.
Yeah. So no regrets of school.
No. I mean, no regrets for anything. I just am not a big. Like you said before, like failure. Like I think, I have a kid. I have a 3-year-old, and I mentioned this briefly, but like I've been thinking a lot about frustration tolerance, because they talk about that a lot with kids, that like learning how to learn is an incredibly difficult thing.
But if you can master that.
It's like a superpower. And the way that they talk about that in kid land is frustration tolerance, but I wish somebody had talked about it like that for me. The question was asked, like, how do you know that you're in a learning space? How do you know that you're like learning something? And the answer that came up was like frustration. Like, you know that you are mid-learning.
Yeah.
when it feels kind of bad.
You're at the cusp of comfort and discomfort.
Yeah. So the more comfortable that you can get with that particular type of discomfort, how long can you sit in that frustration? How long can you? So I think for me, I love feeling good and I love being happy and I love enjoying my life. And the great gift that I've given myself is that when I'm not feeling those things, I just remind myself over and over again that that's got to mean that I'm learning. Like when I'm in the pit of it all, when it feels overwhelming, like that's where the meat is. And that the next high that I get to ride is probably going to be a direct product of the energy that I put into like kindly, generously, and warmly moving through whatever. Like
they say the highs are highs and the lows are lows, but what if you reframe the low to not be, it's low, but like your reframe is making it manageable?
I learn less when I feel good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Which doesn't mean that there's not a lot of value there. Like there's a lot of value there, but like the most meaty times in my life are often the ones where I kind of moving through it felt the most scared or frustrated.
Yeah. There's definitely, so like a source of fulfillment for us can be, being able to identify if there is a level of challenge at the moment.
Yeah, I think it's all, you just sort of trick yourself. And it's like we all pick what language we use in our own heads about stuff. And I think what I'm learning now as I move into what is actually starting to feel like some version of adulthood, is that that language that I pick for me is really potent, and that I think I've landed pretty cleanly on, like, it's a learning journey, and I'm seeking out the joy and the fun of that learning, and also trying to learn how to tolerate the frustration and the challenge of the learning so that I can keep kind of riding those waves.
It's one thing for us to define when, if ever, we give up on something for ourselves, but how do you define it for your child? So like when you're introducing something new, when would you let them walk away from something? It could be as simple as a sport or an instrument.
Yeah. He's 3, so I'm just at the very beginning of my sort of like small battles. I bet that a parent of like a 10-year-old would have some really wise words on this. What I'm realizing right now is that I just have a different job than I thought that I had, and this has been a great reflection for me as a person too. Like
job in general, like
as a parent or as a like I think you have a kid and you're like, oh, I got to teach him, I got to show him. I got to show him the way. I am feeling like my job is actually to show up as whole as I can. Yeah. Because so much of how he responds, so much of what I get from the world is about how I walk into it. You wake up it's confirmation bias again. It's like you wake up on a grumpy day. You're like, I'm so unlucky. Any bad thing that's going to happen to you all day is going to confirm the thing you told yourself in the morning. But if you wake up and you're like, oh man, I'm so lucky. You could trip and fall, and it doesn't have a bucket to go into. It's just like, oops, I fell. And then you like find a penny on the ground, and you're like, oh, I'm so lucky. Like I really think that that's the tool that I try and play in. But I think when it comes to my kid, it's not up to me what he chooses to do. It's like, it's like showing him. So sometimes when he's trying to zip his jacket up and he's struggling and I see him starting to look towards me like he's going to ask for help, I'll throw my jacket on and I'll start struggling too. Because if he looks over and he sees that I'm struggling with the same problem as him, then he doesn't ask me for help. He keeps working on it on his own. So some of it is like trying to figure out how to give him the runway to not default to my set of skills. And I think some of it's also being loud about my struggle, like not in a way that I think could throw off his sense of safety and comfort. Like I'm not screaming around the house on the bed, but to say, I feel so frustrated right now. I feel really frustrated.
Yeah. I wonder at what age do you start to really come into your own and start to carve your own path?
He's there. I swear to you, he's there. And I swear, and it blows my mind every day because I think the age 3 seems like a laughable age. Like you barely are human at 3. But he's beyond. In a lot of ways, I think that he is helping me realize that I actually grew out of lessons that I knew like better than, there's some shit. He walks into a party and he's like, it's too loud. There's too many people. I don't want to be here. And I'm like, that is exactly how I feel. You just put words to exactly how I feel. The difference is I've been so conditioned to just go to the party anyway. even if I'm unhappy and uncomfortable and I don't want to be there, like my job is to give him tools or show him, like model tools that can help him navigate those situations. But he's showing me that it's like my job to listen to myself. And, you know, he's like pure existence.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
he's also,
it's not as conditioned. Yeah.
It's so much about me. I think any parent will tell you that it is a magnifying glass on all of the parts of myself that
Yeah. If you're that self-aware.
Oh yeah.
There's that level, like the prereq to that.
It really, there was a moment, a big eye-opening moment, and I think it has a lot to do with Good Things Vending, a lot to do with maybe every choice I've ever made, is that I love people, and I'm never totally confident that they love me as much as I love them. You know, there's something like.
And how long did it take for you to be okay with that?
Oh,
that
just now.
It's not always
just
reciprocated,
today,
right?
For the first time. No, I think like some days I wake up and I can deal, and some days I wake up and it's harder. Like but it's
this concept of like, who do you want to be validated by?
Yeah, I mean, really, like rationally, I know that that's not how it works.
Yeah.
But I move through this world and I'm so amazed by what people do, and I just like it comes out of love, it comes out of admiration, but. Sometimes it translates to this feeling of like, am I not enough? Have I done something wrong? Or I'll see somebody else's feeling like, okay, that person's a little quiet today. And then I sort of internalize it. And there was this great breakthrough for me that happened when Theo was young, where he was sort of grumpy. And he was 2 at the time. The kid doesn't have a thought in his head besides like shoe, tree. You know, nothing's good. And I was looking at him saying, well, he seems like he's grumpy today. I must have done something to cause that feeling. And now he's just like not telling me about, like I'm sitting there, I'm a full grown adult. I'm looking at a 2-year-old and I'm putting this just like level.
Overanalyzing it.
My. And I sat there and I thought, that is my kid. Like that is not what's happening here. That has to all be coming from inside of you. So I feel really like lucky that for me, parenting has been the same kind of push that starting a business. It's a
teacher.
It's like ironing it out. It's all the learning. It's like, if I'm doing my job right, it means that I'm not getting it all right. It means that I'm keeping my ears open and my mind open to the ways that it could be.
Yeah.
There's like a hope in that for me, that like none of us are going to be anywhere for that long. And there's like a pain in that too, because like if you really like how things are going, it's like sad to like move on from, but that's like, I'm grateful.
That's the beauty of it.
Yeah,
right?
that's just it. It's like nothing kind of matters that much, like, and we all just gotta roll with it.
Super painful at the moment, or
it's all temporary.
Yeah.
And I think that for me is why you shoot your shot. That's why that's why it's worth the risk. That's why it's worth that's why there isn't failure, because like failure means that you're left right like with less or something, that like it's a retraction, it's a step backwards. And I think for everything that you try that doesn't go how you wanted it to go, well, you don't actually move backwards. Maybe you don't land where you thought you might land in your mind, but that doesn't mean that you've taken a step backwards. You're still moving forward.
Yeah.
It just didn't match your expectation exactly.
A friend, Dr. Dave, calls it falling forward.
Falling forward, yes.
Yeah. Amazing. So from the time you graduated, were you still thinking about photography, or were you thinking about something else?
Oh, I didn't know. I did not know. I loved the city. That was when I fell in love with Chicago.
So it's so okay to not know. But like, what were you doing to get to know or to explore?
Yeah, so I came to Chicago for art school. I came for SAAC.
From where?
From Boston. Middleton, Massachusetts. 15 minutes north of the city. Really close to Salem, Massachusetts.
Oh, okay. Some Stephen King.
Yeah. Witchy town. Came out here for college. My mom ended up being an artist, and I think I just felt permissed to do weird stuff my whole life. Like I've always been.
That's great.
I think retaining your weird is like the secret. And I thought, well, art school will be good. And Chicago's far away from where I grew up, so that sounds right. I had come to one Lollapalooza when I was like 16, and it was like a mind-blowing. I saw people like huffing balloons on Jackson Boulevard when I was like, 15 years old, and I was just like, wow, you can do anything here. This is crazy. And I said, I'm going to go there. Like, I got to be there. I got to be someplace where I can do the you can do anything vibe. That's what I was looking for.
As opposed to New York, or New York was too close?
Too close. It was just too close. Yeah, okay. I needed to like properly separate. And I think I had what felt like a familiarity with New York, and I wanted to like be someplace where,
wow, good for you.
Like fresh, clean. Yeah.
Because some people are scared to go that far.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think those people probably had like more communal relationships that would keep them where they were.
Okay.
Like the conditions of my life just made it easy to sort
a blank slate.
Yeah.
Okay.
A chance to be seen and to experience the world like as I felt like I was at that moment.
Okay.
So through those 4 years at art school, 4 years, that's actually not at all what happened. I was there for 2 years and then I failed the class. Was like, this is not going well. I'm like overwhelmed and I don't know what I'm doing.
What was the
here.
class?
It was a photography class. Heidi Norton was the teacher. I failed because it was sort of like the not knowing how to administrate a life issue. Like I was a kid who didn't know how to deal administratively with so I had been sick for one class, but the class that I had missed, we had been taught how to print our photos in the color darkroom, pretty vital. And then the project that we had to turn in was like 18 color darkroom prints, which was like sort of an unhinged amount for people who were just learning how to do it. So I had missed the class where we had learned. So then I had reached out and Heidi had gotten the TA to like show me on an off day. But I've learned a lot about how my brain works. And it turns out that like I have to be very thoughtful about how I acquire information because it's not always super easy for me. So I really struggled. And I tried really hard to get those 18 prints done and I did not. So I sent her a message like 2 days before the crit and I said, I'm not gonna have this done. What should I do? And she had maybe a little bit of a unkind response and was sort of like, if you don't finish them, don't bother showing up. And I didn't know that wasn't like a verbatim instruction. Like I sort of was like, okay, well I can't finish them, so I guess I can't show up. So I didn't show up. In retrospect, I should have shown up. You should always show up. Even if you haven't finished the work, you should always show up. And then I got sort of dinged for that, and then that went to and I just never pushed back. I was just sort of like, okay, I fail, I fail. Yeah. Probably should have pushed back. But that, it was a tough run. So I took a year off and I traveled across the country with my friend in a Subaru Outback. We like farmed.
You had a friend that was that was open to traveling across the country with you?
She was already kind of doing that kind of, she was like tanning deer hides and like making tinctures.
What?
And yeah, very cool. She like built tiny houses. She like made
that
puppets.
Age?
Yeah.
Like I'm guessing early 20s? Like,
I mean, probably 18, 19.
Oh my goodness.
People, yeah, I feel like that's where the coolest stuff is happening. Go find an 18, 19-year-old right now. Like cool stuff's happening.
Really?
Maybe I'm wrong, but that's what I felt. I felt
wild.
Like things were really, it was exciting, and it was like a lot of freedom. We had a lot of freedom. So took a year off and took a trip.
Just roughing it.
Yeah. She led the way on that. I didn't really know what I was doing. Like I came back and people were
what
like,
an adventure.
Wow, amazing. And I was like, yeah, thank goodness.
So
Clara was there.
and how long, was it a year you said, or how?
It was a year on and off. Like
Yeah.
we sort of different little chunks. Like I was home for a short piece and.
Okay. So home in Boston?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
And then came back and sort of finished out my time in school, but it was very slow rolling. I had to have a job. Like I was working at Wow Bow and Water Tower, that like little satellite booth on the first floor, wore a chef's coat behind a steam table.
What was this, the feedback from your parents at the time?
Yeah, I think they were supportive. I think that my parents have always been sort of sink or swim parents. And I think that my mom is a powerful woman. She's really prolific. I mean, I have never met somebody who makes like she makes. It's a constant and necessary product of her existence to be making. So I think that it wasn't super unfamiliar for her to hear me say that I was going to be doing something maybe a little bit non-traditional. I've always felt really supported in that. Like, family, I was an only child and there were some dynamics there that were hard. My parents traveled for work, which, if you don't get to socialize around other kids your age, you're going to be weird. Like I was weird. I was so weird. And now I'm so grateful for being weird. But there's a lot of years where holding on to your weird is really painful.
Sure.
And, come back around for me, but it took a while. And I think that I always felt supported in making bold choices. That was always a thing that got a thumbs up from them. There were other things about it that I think were challenging.
From a security standpoint, a safety standpoint.
Yeah. And I think that I'm their only child. So I think that there's particular sort of things that they're looking to hear from me that will make them feel comfortable as parents.
Sure.
I think they've had to live a lot of their lives without hearing those things.
Sure.
So, power to them for sort of letting me hit the road. But also it was up to me. I was, at that point, I was sort of my own. I was kind of doing my own thing anyway. Once I left the house, I wasn't going to be coming back anytime. So I had to figure out what was going to look like for me.
And what did you learn about yourself on these adventures? That ultimately made you because you went back to school, right?
Yeah. Maybe out of default, maybe out of necessity more than anything. But also a return to Chicago. That was a return to Chicago for me. I think the biggest thing that I learned is just I'm in it for the joy. I'm in it for the I'm in it for the adventure.
That's okay. We're still going.
Okay. I think what I learned is that we're all here sucking out of our, we're sucking energy into our own lives. Like we are funneling in what we experience. And I think that being able to leave and drive across the country, I saw that everything was the same and everything was different. Like everybody you ever meet is going to have so much in common and also be so unbelievably their own person that it became this, there's just like this warmth for me of existence. There's this comfort that I get from. But
it's figuring out like so does that reassure you to lean into yourself then?
I think it's like just keep talking, keep being in community. I think the idea for me became that there wasn't a specific answer. There were just a lot of conversations that I had to have. There wasn't one thing that I was looking to hear, but that the act of continuing to put myself out there and continuing to meet people and be in community would be the thing that would push my life forward.
Yeah.
And that's proven true.
Okay. So you come back to Chicago, the default is back in school, but photography is still the thing.
Yeah, and I had to get a job at that point when I came back. So that was sort of like trying to figure out how to do school and work. And candidly came back with a Mormon boyfriend. It was like my first serious relationship. So there were a few years that were kind of like defined by, that was around the time that I found hospitality. When I came back, I had been at Wow Bao and I was like, okay, I should probably find a job that doesn't require me to go downtown to Water Tower and like is connected in some way. So I got offered 2 jobs at the same time simultaneously. I was either going to be taking photos at K Shoes, which was this now closed. They have an iconic sign in Logan Square, huge sign, and it was just like a shoe store. I'd be sitting in the back room like 8 hours a day taking photos of shoes and listing them online, working with one other person. Or I would have my first like kind of official hospitality job hosting at Longman and Eagle.
Oh.
And I staged at Longman and Eagle before I knew what that word meant. And I was asked to fold some menus. I came in at like 8 o'clock on kind of a busy night and they sent me away. They said, it's too busy, come back in an hour. So I left and I came back in an hour and they said, well, it's still busy, but go in the back and fold menus. And I folded the shit out of those menus. Corner to corner. I was like, you're going to give me a folding job? Oh, I'm going to get hired. So I was offered both jobs. And I remember walking up and down Milwaukee Avenue on the phone with a friend of mine being like, I don't know what to do. It's like 2 paths diverge. Like, what do I do? What do I do? Because one job was photography, which was what I had like gone to school to do. But then the other job felt like there was this energy there. There was this vibe that I couldn't ignore.
With the photography, would you have been alone by like just taking these photos? Okay. Yeah, you're missing that communal aspect.
It was better pay though. The photography job was better pay. But finally my dad was the one who was like, you like other people. He was like, I don't know what's wrong with you, but you enjoy it.
That's really nice of him to say.
So I took that job, thank goodness, because that was like, then I had a decade-long career in hospitality where I got to open a bunch of restaurants. I got to make cool teas, and I was the innkeeper for a while, and I saw this huge overlap between hospitality and creative communities in the city. And I think, I mean, in a lot of ways, that's a precursor to Good Things Vending.
Was there a certain setting that you felt like you were a better fit in? Like is it high end? Is it brunch places? Is it, cocktail bars? Like what are we thinking? Well,
I felt really lucky to be at Land and Sea Department right when I was. So I started at Longman and Eagle and I was there for like maybe 2 years, and then I'm elbowy. Like I said, I always want to learn more. So I I learned from Kelly, and I was doing innkeeping there. And then I wanted to learn how to be a barista. I want to learn how to make coffee. So Shiloh trained me how to make coffee. And I had worked at Teavana at Water Tower doing tea
I haven't heard of that
stuff.
brand in so long.
Well, from Japan, I was a tea nerd. I had like grown up drinking green tea, and I always loved tea. And I thought I would have a whole career in tea. Actually, so I started. Then I proposed it. One of the scariest professional things I ever did was I went to Rod from Rare Tea Cellar, and I was a kid who had done like you Google my name, nothing comes. Like, it was just, I didn't exist sort of on the same scale that these like chefs and purveyors were at that moment. Like, that was such a huge moment in Chicago hospitality. I will think about that period of time for the rest of my life because I saw something so magical coming out. And there were all these other things about it, but like, it was a moment.
You're saying the meeting, his name's, I haven't met him.
Rod.
So Rod from Rare Tea Cellar was a very
super
formative
pivotal
moment.
because I walked in, I like basically found out that there was somebody that was importing cool teas.
Yeah.
And everybody was using like Benjamin teas at the time. And I was like, oh, there's somebody who's bringing really special cool teas. I had one of his teas at maybe Cellar Door, maybe like Lula or something. I'd had a tea and I was like, wow, this is amazing.
Okay.
I got connected with him through a chef friend of mine, Matt Swinsky. And Rod just like took a meeting with me. He was just like, sure, come to the space. I might have been the barista. The Dark Matter dudes like trained me how to make coffee the week before. And I think I was sort of riding a high from that. And I was like, well, I'll just hit this guy Rod up. I come in and he like called me his like tea slinging like warrior. Like, he was such an unbelievable cheerleader for me from the moment that I stepped in his space.
Did he see how much you were nerding out? Maybe is that why?
I think he saw how passionate I was, and I think I was really impressed by what he had built. And so then I went back and I said to my GM, I was like, I think that we should switch our tea program. And they said, well, you can propose that to ownership. And I had never met any of the owners before. So while they were having their staff meeting, I like walked up shaking with like teeth, and I was like, this is yerba mate, and it's, and I like poured them out teas. I'm shaking, and then they approved it because it was like somebody was willing to put a lot of thought in, and I put a lot of thought in. So then Rod and I spent like a really fun year and a half making teas for the menu. A tea that we made in 2016 got on Time Out's best thing, like 100 best things we ate this year, Rare Man and Teagle. We like barrel aged it. It was very fun. I had a really great time.
Very collaborative.
Very collaborative,
Yeah.
super collaborative. But hospitality is work that I find unbelievably admirable and asks so much of everybody who does that work. You got to show up, and you're not just doing the mechanisms of the job. Like, you're bringing your spirit to the job. And I think at some point I realized that like maybe I was just too sensitive for that kind of exchange daily. Like,
easy to burn out.
Yeah, it was sort of wearing away at
And it's not to say that you don't love it. It's really interesting. Yeah.
Deep admiration.
Yeah.
But I don't have that thing in my bones that like these great career hospitality.
So what is
folks
it?
that I know.
What do you think it is that helps those individuals persevere?
Oh, I've just seen this. I talk about like the rhyme, that connection.
Yeah.
My friend and Eric and I used to talk about the chopstick thing, which is like, I helped open a restaurant, Biji, and they had chopsticks, and when they fell on the ground, you could hear it anywhere in the room. And we used to talk about, can you arrive at that table with a fresh pair of chopsticks before that person has like bent down to pick up the one that they just dropped?
That happened to us the other night at Hermosa.
And how did you feel when that happened?
We're like, how did you hear that?
Doesn't it feel like magic?
And this is like, but honestly, this is like the third time he dropped the chopsticks. And she's like, they know who it is.
They were actually just waiting, and they actually just staffed an extra person to help you know. But like, there's this feeling that's
that's
like,
amazing.
It's like you just sit there and you're like, it's being cared for.
Yeah,
it's being taken care of. And I think I get so much out of the two-way exchange, out of the collaboration, and I think that a hospitality exchange
more
is
one way.
A little bit more one way.
Yeah,
and you gotta have it in you to show up and give that of yourself. And I think even if you're not in hospitality, you've experienced the difference of what that kind of energy brings to that work. And I mean, that is a career. That's like a. We talk, unfortunately, culturally, it's talked about in a way that I think really sells it short. I think it is a profound choice to make. It's a life of service.
Yeah.
And it's a life of service in in a very built way, like in this way that we've all constructed. So I have a ton of admiration for it, and also not the patience. Like I just don't. I hosted Friday, Saturday, Sunday brunch at Longman and Eagle for 3-hour waits, and it was just, people were awful and also lovely, but entitled, and it just didn't feel reciprocated.
Sure.
And so then I think that really made like the vending thing, when I was thinking about, okay, well, I love art and I'm so blown away by this creative community here in Chicago. Like I see it as the fabric of the whole city. Once you notice it, you can't unnotice it. Wow. It is the packaging on the locally made pickles were drawn by the same person that did the handwriting on the menu at the same place that did the, there's like this
fabric. Wow. That's a good way to describe it.
I feel like once it opens, it's like this doorway that you can walk in, and now things that you wouldn't have felt connected to before, you're sort of deeply connected to.
Yeah.
That, I didn't want to lose that. And that runs through hospitality. You work at one restaurant, you go to another restaurant, and there's this deep interconnectedness, like sending boomerangs. I remember walking over from Lost Lake to U Show with like, delis of slushy and this communal exchange.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to lose that, but I didn't want to have to work service anymore. I didn't want to have to hold my bladder for 8 hours. I didn't want to have to smile and say thank you.
Was there anything else that was adjacent to that then?
Well, that's how I had sort of ended up where I had been.
To get out of service, That's
how I ended up. I was in land and sea operations. So I was like the low man on the high end of the totem pole. So like I worked with ownership and the team that ownership had hired, and I was the task catcher. So if Robert and the construction team was working on a construction project and they knew that they were going to have to like grade the roof of like Lonesome Rose, Golden Teardrops, I would like go ham on researching how to grade a roof or chairs.
Kind of a jack of all trades.
But if Cody was like, okay, we need new Rizzo ink, then I'm researching Rizzo ink. And, I was doing some financial stuff. And I got to be like, it was great for me.
Yeah.
It was a really great opportunity. And I think that it got pretty close to being able to connect to the creativity and the connection and the love and the care of hospitality, but without having to work the shifts.
You got a behind the scenes look.
The missing part for me was really like that collaboration, was that like conversation, because it was still, I wasn't my dream that I was building. And in a lot of ways, that's my favorite job I've ever had. Like it's thrilling to build somebody else's. There's an incredible amount of safety.
Yeah.
Somebody else's passion, somebody else's money, somebody else's,
sure.
For the most part, I could leave and sort of put it
and so
in a pocket.
with that dream, to clarify, the dream, didn't necessarily always include a vending machine.
No.
But it was aspects, like you were thinking of aspects of what that dream could have felt like.
Yeah, I just want to figure out a way to like enjoy my life a lot.
Yeah.
And best case scenario, create an environment for other people to be invited into low stakes ways to enjoy their lives. Because not only do I get a ton of joy from enjoying my own life, I get unbelievable amounts of joy from doing that in company. There's no better feeling for me than like the right song playing and everybody dancing on the dance floor. I get such an unbelievable high from a group of people like saying the same words at the same time. Like there's just something about art, the connectivity of.
Yeah, you feel like you're part of something bigger than yourself.
Yeah, it's what service is, and on a good day, service is this. It's
well-oiled machine.
Oh, man, you finish a good day of service, and like that is just. And I think it's flow state.
Yeah,
it's like
exactly.
Everybody is seeking a flow state, and for me, I think it's been realizing that a lot of what I want to find in flow is the sort of toss back and forth of like a creative ball, like. Okay, you have an idea. I don't think my ideas are that interesting. It's like, I don't think I'm that funny, but I can be situationally funny, and I can have really good feedback, and we can build an idea together. Like that for me is...
That's a feeling.
Yeah, that's a feeling. And I think that I feel really grateful that vending machines became the container for it, because they're so fun. They're
how did you start? When did you come to the realization that this can be a vessel to hold the fabric of artists and hospitality?
So it goes a little bit back to the timeline that we were talking about when we first started chatting, like that Horn and Hard Art Week. I opened up a restaurant that sort of broke me. I like had a really tough professional experience where I felt myself get serious and sort of lose the joy of it. I got the job that I thought that I wanted. I was the director of operations for a big spot, and it was playing off of all these skills that I'd worked really hard to build.
Yeah.
I felt really useful. I felt very knowledgeable. And also life felt so serious. And I didn't feel like I was that fun to be around for other people, but mostly for me. So I said, this isn't working. If you're going to quit, you got to put some parameters around it. So I said, you have 1 year in April of 2008.
This is self-imposed?
Yeah, self-imposed. In April 2019, I said, if I leave, what happens now?
Yeah.
And I had already been messing around with the idea of starting something. And I think maybe like the Horn and Hard Art Week had happened in 2018 where I was thinking about vending machines. But it wasn't until I like quit my hospitality job and gave myself I said 1 year, you have 1 year. That was how much I could afford. I had figured out exactly what I could. And I had to pick up work in the in-between. It was all sort of calculated off of the idea that I would be able to get some amount of work.
Yeah.
So I did some gigs. I temped at WBEZ.
Oh, nice.
Which was...
As a photographer?
No, I did do some photography for them, but sort of incidentally. I temped in the member... So first I volunteered, then I temped in the member services department, and then I photographed their like swag for the spring fundraiser 1 year. And then I applied for the real job that I was temping in, and I did not get it. Heartbreaker. I'm glad it happened though.
Yeah, because, I know, right?
But it was actually during that time, like I was at WBEZ when I actually got the vending machine delivered. And I said to myself, you have 1 year to be a little bit whatever. So I went on Craigslist and I had spent 2018 sort of saving up money to buy a machine.
Yeah. But how was the seed planted?
To actually buy it?
For a vending machine?
For a vending machine. Well, it was the Horn and Hard Art thing, and then I just saw...
And what is that?
It was listening to the episode about the automation. It was listening to the episode where they were talking about the role that automation used to play in America.
Really?
Yeah. And I because then it sent me down this rabbit hole where I like called my dad and I was like, Dad, had you gone to Horn or Hard Art? And he was like, yeah, I used to go all the time. And that, which was crazy because I didn't know a ton about, I don't get to hear a ton of stories from my dad's growing up. So it was like sort of nuts to hear about that. And then I was reflecting on my youth and thinking about vending machines in Japan. So then I started to Google stuff related to automation. And I started to think about like, originally I was like, what if it was a little storefront and it was like sort of these cubbies. And then I bumped into the fact that people had kind of done stuff like that before and that it wasn't really hitting. And then I think at the beginning of the thought, I was like, I could buy a vending machine, but then I ditched that idea. And then I sort of pushed through a bunch of other things and came back to the idea of a vending machine when I realized kind of how accessible it would be. And I knew about Artemat. Artemat has been around for so long. Clark, he has been refurbishing cigarette vending machines, and it's not like a local project, but they're all over the country. Everything's like in a standard size box. And yeah, so there was just like I don't feel like I invented something. I feel like I just pulled off of sort of a bunch of things that kind of already existed. And then my searches got more and more specific. It became weird vending machines. And then I saw that there was an egg vending machine in France and an oyster vending machine and a bread vending machine. And then I started to build out this vision. And then I started to Google art vending machine, like as I got closer to sort of the vision of my thing. And then I bumped into a vending machine at a local bar that had condoms and toothbrushes, but also paintings by the bartender. And then I bumped into the Venderia in Portland, who was doing something kind of similar, a DIY machine, kind of bike culture thing. And little by little started to realize that the pieces of it kind of existed in the world already. And then found a machine.
Okay, so that was enough to at least get at that time. Were you brainstorming what could go into these machines?
Well, that was the first thing. Like the first thing ever was I went to my friends and I was like, hey guys, I really love what you make. Do you think you can make it vendable? My first move, I remember calling Tanner Bowman and being like, hi, I'm thinking about doing a thing. Is this like a die you would be willing to throw in my direction? And just got so, from the moment I started talking about it, okay, with the caveat of sometimes it would take a minute to explain what I was visioning. But once I could get people
to buy into it,
to sort of see what I was seeing.
Yeah.
I got just so much support and so much excitement, like from artists. Like it was people that I wanted to be working with who were like, oh, that sounds so interesting. That makes me think about this and that. And any time that the response to something that I'm saying is somebody else saying, well, that makes me think about this, I'm like, oof.
We're rhyming now.
Yeah, keep going, okay? Like, should we pop open a drink? Like, what are you doing for the next 10 hours? So I think that was like, those were sort of all the seeds. But the actual vending machine, that felt like sort of a symbol more than a real thing. Like the saving up of the money, the buying of the machine, it was the jumping off of the cliff. It was the like, I am so ADD that I have like had lots of ideas in my life. And I think I just said, if you're going to spend $2,000 on a vending machine, you have to do something with it. It doesn't need to be a giant, big, I didn't know I was setting out to do business, but you cannot just end up being somebody who bought a vending machine in their 20s and now has been carting around a vending machine for 20 years. Like it has to enter the world in some way.
Yeah.
But then it took a long time to figure that. It was like supposed to go into the Chicago Athletic Association hotel.
Oh, okay.
And then they closed down.
I
just
had the old beverage manager here yesterday, David Moore.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
That's great.
He's up to, he had a pretty whirlwind of a year with Truce and Mira, Lilac Tiger, Coach House.
Whoa.
He's doing a lot right now.
That's amazing. I feel like hospitality is sort of catching a second wind right now. I'm hoping.
Yeah.
I think we get it tough. But that's, so that,
wow.
I had been connected to that space through doing work with Land and Sea Department. I'd helped open the second floor properties. So knew some folks there and had sort of like softballed them the idea.
This is my first time hearing. Is that the name of the hospitality group? Land and Sea?
Land and Sea Department. So Longman and Eagle was a precursor to both Land and Sea and 16 on Center. Land and Sea and 16. So 16 on Center is like Dusex, Salt Shed, Dahlia.
Okay.
Land and Sea is like Parsons, R.I.P. Lost Lake.
I didn't know that.
Lonesome Rose.
Yeah.
So,
but I've been to Cherry Circle Room.
Yeah. So Cherry Circle Room it's like the hotel's its own thing, and that's actually no longer a Land and Sea spot as of sort of recently. But we helped open that project, and so knew somebody there and had sort of talked to them, and maybe we're going to put the machine in there, and then that person got like furloughed, and the whole building closed.
That was your connection. Oh, building closed. Oh,
everything closed. Everything closed. The whole world closed.
The pandemic times.
So I had this vending machine and I had this concept and I thought I had a location, and then it all went away. So then
I forgot you're at Kimball as well.
Kimball Arts.
Yeah. Kimball Arts Center.
Yeah, that one.
I used to get my dog food from there, and then she moved.
I know.
Marcia. She's open now.
She is? Where's she at?
She is in Humble.
Okay.
Now.
That was a tough.
She's sharing space with a boarding center.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
That's exciting.
Yeah.
I tried to get her to put her house-made treats in the machine for a minute.
Oh.
She has these really yummy.
I know.
I think it was too chaotic with the
It can be.
But yeah, I think I've been really lucky to be connected to like the spaces. I think that's been a big part of it too, like the perception of the project.
So how long were you in limbo for when the pandemic first started happening then?
So, then I got pregnant.
Oh.
Yeah. Talk about a curveball. I would joke with my friends about like, there's nothing more freeing than abandoning every image that you had of how your life would turn out. Hadn't planned on having kids.
Yeah.
And like had planned on also not living through a pandemic. So there was a lot of change. So machine was going to go in 2019. Pandemic happened. The machine didn't get out into the world until 2021. And essentially, I found out that I was pregnant. And I looked at my partner and I was like, we didn't plan on having kids, and all options were on the table. We just got there and realized that we actually were like down to go on that journey. Very glad that we made that choice, but whoa. So I looked at him and I was like, okay, do you need me to get a real job? Or can I try to get this crazy thing done before I pop out a kid? Because the short term of it is like, it'll be hard.
Yeah.
But the long term is that I could build a job for myself that I think would allow me to live the life that I really want to live.
It's great foresight.
Yeah. And thank goodness that I have the partner that I have, because he was just profoundly supportive. And
amazing.
I mean, from day one, I feel like there's never been a moment that he ever questioned or made me feel like I should question the choices. And So then sort of then it got a little bit more intense because it was sort of like there was a clock on
constraints,
it now. Yeah. So launched the first machine in the Chicago Cultural Center.
Did you know someone?
Yeah.
Oh.
So, well, it was, man, it's so crazy to like tell a story in this way. I don't know that I've ever like fully.
That's the beauty of long format.
I know it's kind of interesting. It's like nice. It feels more honest maybe than the versions that I've sort of had to put together for short form. I, at that time, was tabling at events as Good Things Vending, but just with the vintage and nostalgia items.
Oh.
I had like an Etsy shop where I was selling like vintage and nostalgia stuff, and had set up at the music house that did like an outdoor market. And at that time, Stella was set up for Buddy, which did not exist yet, but was about to be opened in the Cultural Center as the new store. They had a store a very long time ago that closed. It was operated separately. They then took on proposals for something to fill the space. Public Media Institute and Stella, so like Ed Marzuski and that team had sort of pitched to the Chicago Cultural Center this concept of a local art store. They had been selected.
Wow.
Stella had begun building it. Pandemic stuff had kind of shut it down.
Who's Stella? Stella the beer?
Stella Brown. So Stella is like a phenomenal curator and
I didn't know
artist,
that.
and
Okay.
just like another
That's so cool.
like person about town who sort of like has some of the same inclinations that I do.
That space has or holds value for the indie makers.
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah, that was definitely the hope. So Stella had been working really hard and had all these connections and all this curating, and I was set up at this market, and Stella was at this market, and somebody, if you are out there, come find me. Because I know that we have chatted one other time, but this moment like changed my life. They walked up to me and they said, "Have you met Stella?" And I was like, no, not yet. But I didn't really know that person that well either. And then they, I think, walked up to Stella and said, "Have you met Steph?" And they kind of did like a matchmaking thing. Stella and I started chatting, and we just like were chatting with all the same artists. Like she was looking to stock the store with a lot of the same folks that I was looking to vend. And there was all this sort of synchronicity in the way that we were looking to make something that was accessible and that considered things like barriers to entry, and that you didn't necessarily need to be prolific.
Values and missions,
but she hadn't done anything like that before, and I had specialized in openings, hospitality openings, but openings. So she needed hands. So I was like, well, I'll come in and I'll like help you get a POS set up, and I like figured out how to barcode stuff, and so we got to work together for a while. But it meant that I was in the building all the time. So when I was in the building, and when people say, "What are you up to?" I answer the question the most honest way that I can, which isn't today I recorded a podcast. It's like, what am I up to? I'm thinking a lot about. I answer it the same way that I would be excited if somebody would answer it to me. Like, what's going on in your world? Like, oh, well, I've been thinking a lot about this thing right now, and I'm really excited about it. And, because that feels so much more honest to me than just like, I'm having a good day, or like, I'm having a weird day. So I had been talking to so many people. It's not like I just had one conversation, but ended up in the bathroom with Jen, who at the time was recurating the Welcome Center to be local Chicago focused. And she knew a little bit of sign language, American Sign Language, and I knew a little bit of American Sign Language. We both knew sort of an equally low amount of American, like it's the amount where it's sort of scary to try it with somebody who actually uses that as their main form of communication, but there was safety because we both... So we would sort of practice it with each other in the hallway in like a silly way, and that just struck up like a really loose friendship that became her really cheerleading for this project, and then eventually giving it space.
Beautiful. That's amazing.
Yeah. And without that, nothing else would have happened, because the legitimacy of going into the Chicago Cultural Center, not only having a machine as proof of concept, but having it in a place that was so recognizable, I think made a lot of what would come after feel possible. Wow.
And so now you're like, I got to build one and curate one that's fitting for the cultural center.
Yeah, and was
that fun, or was that a lot of pressure, or both?
It was really fun until the day that we had to launch it. I was having such a good time until the day that it had to go out. And the day that it had to go out, I was like, I am going to have a panic attack. Like, I feel so sick, because I didn't know how to use a machine. Like, I had messed with it. My friends owned a distillery, Leatherby, and they had let it sort of sit in that space for a while. And Nate, who works there, had read the manual and taught me a couple of, but I was really launching a machine without having had the lived experience that would give a person confidence that they could deal with whatever. But I didn't really pitch them artists in the same way. I reached out to Molly Ann Bishop, who I loved her work. We had bumped into each other before in spaces, and like she said yes, and that felt huge. And then I knew that the Cultural Center was trying to do something really city focused, and maybe that's why I thought her work would be a good fit because of this. She does a lot of like real life comic. She does ceramics and then comics or like drawn illustrations on the ceramics, but she also does her own like 2D work, and the 2D work always felt like a slice of life.
Yeah.
And it felt like that was what they were trying to make this room into, was like a little bit of a slice of life kind of Chicago or whatever. So getting her on board was amazing. And that collaborative process was really fun because we were just like spitballing things that felt specifically Chicago. Like Rainbow Club is on that machine, which feels really fun. There's like a city side and a neighbor side. And then filling that one also felt easier.
Oh, good.
Because it was just like a first. It's been the doubling that was hard. Like going from one machine to two was intense, like inventory wise. Going from 2 to 5 one summer was like, those have been, but it was actually like, the process of it has all felt pretty fluid.
Yeah.
I think it's that thing, like if you find the right pieces, things kind of groove.
Yeah.
Like if you find the right collaborators, if the thing fits together.
It's like there's so much beauty in collaboration, but there's this unspoken like reliability. You have to rely on each other.
Yeah. That's the hard part.
There's a link, and if there's a weak link, that's scary.
I think some of what I'm learning is that like I try really hard to push back against that feeling inside of myself. I work a certain way. I move through things in a certain way. And one of the things that I think I've been working on to become a better collaborator in order to facilitate more collaboration in my life, because it's what I want, is to try really hard to like understand how other people move in their own work. We can do things really differently, and both ways can be good and valid. And now if we're collaborating, those two things just have to find a way to talk to each other.
Yeah.
You don't necessarily need to do things my way. I don't need to do things your way. But both people need to be comfortable enough to acknowledge that it is possible that both things can be okay.
Okay.
Which I think that the thing that it impacts is things like the timeline. Like we don't work in timelines. We work in time flows.
Yeah.
Because if you put these tight constrictions around it, then it becomes, there's like too many fail points.
I'm probably the more impatient one. So like
Me
if
too.
like I want something to happen, I'm gonna make it happen. But now I gotta wait for someone to make it happen. Then
Well, because that's a product of that good energy in you. That's a product of that like right, like it's like a fire. It's like a want. It's like you want to push it forward because you want to see it happen.
And so the longer you delay that, it's like I'm scared the flame will like extinguish.
Totally. So I think what I'm trying to learn is just that other people's flames burn differently, and that to me there's sometimes things that look like, I think I'm just learning I think in a good collaboration, I cannot create the container before. I can do everything that I can to sort of put bumpers up, put a framework up. But if we're really doing collaboration, then there's always going to be some amount of flow and unpredictability to allow for everybody within the collaboration to move through it in the way that feels good for them, within reason, within respectful reason.
Yeah, 100%.
But that like creating that, I think sometimes makes the best outcomes. It's been interesting. Like, it's interesting because it definitely like challenges me. Like there's times that it sort of puts me on edge. Like, is this all going to work out?
Yes.
Is this going to be okay?
Yeah.
But what I can tell you is that every single time it's been okay.
Nice.
Even if it wasn't exactly the thing, like it's all been okay.
Good.
So I think I feel like, I mean, not to like get too heady with it, but I do feel like capitalism really pushes back. Like I think that there's like this urgency thing that ropes in with, you got to move fast. You got to do a lot, quantity. You gotta grab all the opportunity. You got to work within with confines and constraints.
It's tough because you don't want these items to be more than $20, right? So that there is a constraint.
Yeah.
Right. To where you need a certain quantity to make things work.
Totally. And I think that the hope though is that it's like volume across a wide stretch. It's not that because it's this sort of like cumulative effort.
Yeah.
Good Things Vending isn't paying anybody enough for them to live, but it's like another one of these little pieces that you can sort of add in.
But you just never know what can come from it.
Yeah. And that sometimes it's the thing you sell, but even more than that, it's all the people that got to see your work that maybe hadn't before.
Yeah.
That person that might call you to make a mural.
Even if they didn't buy it, it's just like it's there, you know?
Yeah, that we get to all exist with like beautiful stuff around us.
With the 50 locations you have, what have you noticed about a location that makes it ideal for good things vending? Well, you said 50 machines, right?
No, 8.
Only 8? Why did I hear? I heard 50 earlier.
That would have been crazy.
Yeah, okay, so
you know who
8.
does have like that many is the. I think that Magic Box has like a lot. I think
Not familiar.
they're the ones that are in LA and Portland.
Oh.
I don't know how to manage that many machines. Yeah, we have 8 right now, and it is. I'm just trying to grow at the pace that will allow me to keep the thing that I love alive.
I wonder if there's an intersection where you have more locations, you have the bandwidth to have more machines, but there's only so many people to go tend to those machines.
Yeah, me and Dave does all the tending. Yeah, at some point, like we'll have to grow. During the summer, there were more hands. Like there was a bigger team because we were doing more stuff.
Sure.
I think that's the unanswered question for me right now. The unanswered question for me right now is, and I think that I'm just defaulting to slow. I think I'm just defaulting to like,
sure.
In general, I think rushing or grabbing or hustling is more likely to put me in a position that I hadn't considered than like moving a little slow.
Yeah.
One of the hardest ones was last year. Like I said, I moved to Chicago in some part because of this like really impactful Lollapalooza that I went to. And Lollapalooza reached out last year and asked for machines, and they asked for them quickly, and I couldn't do it.
Oh.
And saying no to that, I didn't say no. I said, please come back to me next year. I said, please come back to me next year.
How close were you to pulling machines from another location?
I wasn't.
Okay.
I wasn't.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. I'm kind of a stickler for like
just doing things right. Like if it's meant to be, it'll happen again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I think that an opportunity doesn't mean anything. It's like how you show up for it.
Oh yeah.
That you can have the best opportunity in the world, and if you roll in not ready for it, like it's nothing.
Mm-hmm.
So I think I felt like, as much as it felt like there was something in front of me, I knew that I couldn't really make it into the something that it felt like it could be.
That you would have been happy with, yeah.
And that I would rather wait.
Sure.
to take that on when I felt like we could crush it. And
okay.
that
would have been great. Yeah,
I emailed them
in
January. Like I emailed them last month to be like, hey, you guys want to talk about this for next year? That's the way that I feel like sometimes people ask for advice. They're like, it's like, be shameless.
Shoot your shot. Yeah.
Like love the no, love the rejection, love the like learn to love that feeling.
Yeah.
Because if you can get really comfortable and best case scenario, feel really proud of yourself, even if you don't get anything that you want, like then there isn't anything, then everything feels touchable. It feels like there's absolutely
That's the best.
nothing.
Like if you can be honest with the quality of work that you just produced and you're happy with that, shouldn't that be unshakable despite the answer that you get?
I think it should be unshakable.
Yeah.
But I think that like, and I'm really honest about it. Like I want to be liked.
Oh yeah.
And I want people to like what I do.
Yes.
But I think it's trying to figure out where to put that.
Yeah.
That is actually a separate conversation than the who I am and what I'm doing conversation. That both things can be true.
Yeah. And so you're reclaiming some of that agency.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just that it's a truth about me. Like I want to be putting things out that people
it's pretty universal.
enjoy and Yeah.
But it can be exclusive.
Yeah. And that the failure to do that isn't a failure. That it is the attempt that is the success. It's like the trying that's the cool thing. Mm-hmm. It's the vulnerable. One of the best things I ever learned from improv. I took like one improv class at IO because everybody always said I'd be good at it. I was not.
I can see that. Oh no, really?
No, I'm too in my own head.
But that's the thing. It's like how many iterations does it take to get out of your head?
Yes. If I kept going, I'm sure I could get good at it. But like I did not have the improv instinct. But one of the best things that I learned from it is that it's not fun or funny to be cool. It is so interesting.
Embracing your weird.
Yeah. Be the loser. Be willing to be the loser. Like. If you're like, oh man, you got a booger in your nose, and you're like, no, I don't. Not funny. Kind of awkward. Like a thing I don't really want to.
Do I?
Yeah. Oh, this you mean? This giant booger that I'm like, that's hilarious.
Yeah.
And I think like that being willing, that willingness, and that's something that I'm growing into every day. It's not easy. There's days I wake up a little bit less sturdy in my bones. And on those days I try to do the things that try to check with my body, try to like bring myself back to it. But yeah, on a good day, on a good day, that's where my sense of self comes from. And that means that there's so much space for other types of failure and no's and dings because
Yeah.
Because inside of me, I know I'm doing it, and that's really cool. That's like enough, I feel like proud of that. And I think, yeah, that's why the social media part of this project has been like challenging for me, is because I think that.
Well, I'm done chasing the algorithm.
Yeah. It's just really, really bizarre to be perceived.
I will strive
in this way.
to create.
Make what you like.
Content. Yeah. Like, I don't think of myself as a content creator these days. It's more so, at least for social media, it's like cutting up a clip that is representative of the episode.
It's art. I like it's its own practice. It's like, I think so much of it is audience focused now, and like when you're making in all other ways, like, is it helpful to ask that question as much? Like if you're making a painting, every day that you wake up and you work on this painting, is it helpful to ask who you're making it for every day? Maybe it is. I don't know if it would be for me. And I think that like social feels like this production for others, production to show, to convince, to bring in. And I think that that's hard. That like plays off of some.
So definitely when I've heard about like, just especially like vlogging, just document, you're not like, and some can be overtly curated. But if you think about it as like just documenting a diary in a way, right? And regardless of what happens, and it's interesting because you said earlier, if like trying to reframe your perspective of like novelty in the mundane.
Yeah.
And it's fun to look back too.
That's when it's the best for me. That's when social media is the best. It's the best when I'm like, wow, I'm actually really into the visual of my own life right now. There's a vending machine being painted in the garage. Like my dogs are running around. Like I want to clip together a little movie of this because I'm feeling it. I'm in it. I love the joy of this. Like it's a story I want to tell. And there's weeks that I wake up and I'm really in my life, and it just feels harder to make that thing in a way that's genuine. And I also think that sometimes I know that the answer might be to fold people in all the way and just sort of exist online in all my parts. But it's the thing I've really been struggling with. Like the more that we invest online, and I like the internet and I like being online, but if there isn't a balance, if you're so invested in building online, that energy does get taken away from building in the real world. So I think it's like trying to figure out how to sit in the middle, I do think it benefits my business and the connection and the community. And it
reminds me of those that want to optimize their life. And it's just like you spend so much time thinking about how to optimize and you just forget to live.
Yeah, like I just want to live my life. Yeah. It's taken a long time to give myself permission to like just exist without some idea that I'm supposed to be hitting some marker or doing things in a certain way. And I think that you can be unhappy and happy in any life. And I think that when I actually look at like the parameters of my life, I'm like so unbelievably lucky. It's insane. Like like it's kind of crazy, and it feels kind of intense sometimes that I just am on like the receiving end of such a kind of like a profound.
Yeah.
Like I'm really lucky really happy, really grateful.
Right.
And I want to make sure that I hold most closely to that connection to it, and that sometimes the storytelling part of it for social media feels really fun and like an art practice. Yeah. And sometimes it feels like it wants to touch on my life or something. Like it wants to pull from like my life energy.
What if that's the key that unlocks the,
Yeah, maybe, but I'm not sure I'm willing to do that totally yet.
Sure.
I think if this were different, maybe I would be, but at the end of the day, like the social media, the benefit of it is that more people in Chicago now know about Good Things Vending. So my hope, what does that translate to? I'd love it when I open a studio, if it means that there's more people that are coming and I'm getting to meet them and talk to them. Because one of the things is like people send me messages and I just can't respond to the amount of contact, but it all matters.
What if, so is this studio, like could it be a shop? Like what if the studio was a vending machine?
I've dreamed about having
like your own, for lack of a better term, four-sided, right? Like you just find knickknacks in four-sided.
Or just like a kiosk in the front. That's the dream, would be to have like a sort of storefront studio where like the front part of it kind of like unlocks separately from that you could come into a room.
Like a walk-in vending machine.
Yeah, like an ATM kind of
store.
room.
I don't know. It's just
it's like, you know, like those rooms that you walk in where there's ATMs and like banks, and like in a bank you sort of have that first ATM room, and then you have, that's like the dream. I'd love to open, I talk about it as Good Things Landing. Like someday I'll have this is more of like
So you physically don't have to be there.
See, this is so that it's not in my house. Because like when I get strep, the whole business shuts down. Like poor Dave like has to come over with a mask and like load up from the basement.
Yeah.
And
Can you imagine that day where it's not just in another location, but people seek out your location? Like, they're seeking out. What if you go to a brewery to seek out a vending machine?
It's happened, and it feels crazy. Like I met a family. There were these 3 women who were they had to decide on their family vacation, and they were looking at 2 different places that both had Harry Potter exhibits. They were going to do like a Harry Potter trip. They came to Chicago because they really wanted to see the vending machines, and that was the thing that tipped. I cried the night that I found out. I was like, why is it? How is it possible? I can't thank you for loving what I do. Yeah, it was like that's like really crazy.
That is so cool.
I mean, that's the internet. That's like the internet. That's how something looks on the internet, you know?
Yeah.
You can love something in a way on the internet and like create an idea of it for yourself that is.
Yeah.
They had their own idea. Like I
know.
Their experience of Good Things Vending is probably different than definitely different than mine.
Yeah.
For them it was this finite, clean, robust, static thing.
Right. Yeah, you can only hope that it meets or exceeds expectations.
Yeah. I bumped into them, and we ended up having a great time. So I know that one went well. You know, I don't get to meet a lot of the people that use the machines.
Well, I think people appreciate being able to put a face behind any good or service.
Yeah.
And so continue sharing if you're, whatever parts of your life you're willing to share, and it makes things personal. I mean, that's something that I find very fulfilling through this, is like when I go through a grocery store or another show or a restaurant, I no longer, just understand that it's not just a plate on the table. There's so much effort and experience that goes into this.
I do struggle with being perceived, though. Yeah. I do struggle with
everyone does.
Yeah,
I know everyone does.
Universal, maybe.
Everyone does. I went to I don't know if Carmilla's listening, but Carmilla is a fitness instructor. But I went to one of her yoga classes, and she always asks the class, like, who's new here? And I raise my hand because I've never taken her class. And she's like, you're new, but not that new. Everyone go listen to his podcast. I'm like, oh, crap.
It's like you're both so grateful to have people that support you in that
I know.
way.
I'm
and
like,
also
thank you,
it's like,
but
I want to shrink, Oh my God. My whole life is that. I'm like simultaneously like, yeah, tell everybody. And I'm also like, but tell them when I've left the room, tell them when I'm not around.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel really proud. But I definitely think I've been conditioned. I'm trying to get better at saying, thank you so much. Like when somebody says something nice, just thank you so much.
Yeah.
I heard other people do that, and I thought, wow, that sounds great.
Yeah. I'm getting used to that on a one-on-one basis. Like, oh, Victor hosts a podcast. I do. Or like even introducing yourself as like, oh, I'm a host. Took a very long time for me to do that.
I think that's a big thing in the art world too. I think a lot of people who are artists don't call themselves artists because the task of claiming that title feels like sort of heavy in your ego or something.
Yeah. So did you, what have you noticed about an ideal space for your machines? Because it tends to be like breweries and restaurants.
I think there's a little bit of it's like a math equation. There's all these different pieces that could make it work. And you could have a phenomenal location that has the first 20 pieces and a phenomenal location that has the second 20 pieces. And they'd be totally different spots, but both great. But I think the bones of it is that with an art vending machine, it's a different kind of audience than a snack vending machine. You don't have the same sort of return. So in an office building with the same 30 people, you could sell the same dude Lay's chips every day for a year.
Right.
But with an art vending machine, it's about the number of fresh eyes on the machine. So I love being at places that get fresh people.
I see.
Numbers help. The amount of like people moving through a space, of course, more people, more eyes on it is going to be better. I want to be in the in-between spaces. Like if I want to catch you when you have left the group and when your pace has resumed to solo pace. So like you're at the bar and you got to go to the bathroom. You leave your group, you walk to the bathroom. I want to be in the bathroom hallway.
Yeah.
Because I want to catch you when it wouldn't feel vulnerable. Like I don't want a machine in the middle of a room. Because then you walk up to it to use it and you're kind of in a spotlight.
Okay.
It's this really personal exchange. Like I want to be in this sort of forgotten corner, but with a neon light so that it pulls you in. Yeah, I think it's like you want to catch people in a moment where they can pause, but pausing won't put them.
Can you imagine like people that are waiting to get in the restroom?
Yeah, so one of the best locations, Metropolitan.
Oh, nice.
That was phenomenal.
Yeah.
First of all, what a gorgeous RIP. They were. I feel
know.
another like they were my second location, and without them, I just don't think it goes any further than that. Like they were just unbelievable. Dave, who I work with, my teammate, the other half of the business, he was a brewer there. I met him at Metropolitan.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Really just like pivotal. But their machine was sort of on a wall where when people lined up to buy drinks at the bar, they lined up past the machine.
Yeah. I saw a picture of it.
You could take one step out of line. And
you're not really out of line, yeah.
So the entire time that people were standing in line, I think they were looking at the machine, scoping out what was there. So that cool. Location was a heavy hitter. That was crazy. That machine would rip. But like one of our newer locations and a place that I feel, again, like wildly grateful to be in is the Garfield Park Conservatory. What's so funny is that if you asked me in 2009, a year after I had moved here, what my two favorite buildings in Chicago were, I would have said the Chicago Cultural Center and the Garfield Park Conservatory. I did a project on the Cultural Center because it used to be the library. It's a very cool building with a lot of history. And then the Garfield Park Conservatory is just a treasure, an actual treasure. Yeah. So that location's kind of crazy because I'm in like a weird hallway there. So it's off of the desert room, and when it's warm out, they open those doors and you can go outside, and that hallway gets a lot of traffic. But in the winter, those doors are closed. It's essentially in a closed hallway that nobody would have a reason to go in. And I'm shocked that people it still gets used a lot. And I think that that's because of the meandering nature of how people move through that space.
Yeah.
Everybody always talks about the airport being like a great location for a machine. And I think that it would be a great location if the only goal was like sales. But I think the thing that the speed of that space means that if something goes wrong, it goes wrong with like urgency behind it. Like something gets jammed and like that person is sprinting. They don't have 5 minutes for you to like answer their text message back.
What about train station?
Yeah, I think that's a great one. I think any time that you have that sort of like chill, static, I even think like a large barber shop with a waiting room could be great. I think, but breweries tend to be across the creative vending machine industry. Like if you ask other people who do put weird stuff in vending machines, they would all say breweries.
Okay.
I have had great success in other types of places as well. But that I think has a lot to do with Chicago. Like I just think we make really cool other kinds of spaces for people to move through. I think breweries make a lot of sense because the nature of it is like, it's not turn and burn like a restaurant. Profit margin for beer is good. So you're not just trying to get people to drink theirs and get out. You like want them to hang and drink and take their time. And it's great if you can get another round. So for the business, it's good. We'll have games or lighters, things that you might have to leave to go get, or if your dog comes with you, we have what you need, but also things to sort of extend. If your kids are here, okay, well, here's like a kid's grab bag. That'll get you another 15 minutes of hanging out. And they generally have a ton of space. It's the right kind of energetic audience. They're there just to chill and enjoy and relax. And so that's sort of the sweet spot.
You just made it in Revolution too, right?
That's about to launch. Hannah is currently painting that machine.
Nice.
This is another thing that's been really cool about this sort of synchronicity of stuff. After working with artists to paint machines, it has been so fun to watch. Now I feel so connected to their work, and it's been so cool to watch the other stuff. Like Hannah just got, she got awarded. They got awarded the what am I? The
John Bench for art or
for art, the best gig poster designer for the Chicago Readers.
Oh,
best,
wow!
Huge deal.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, they've been doing this work for a long time, but like that's a really cool kind of recognition. Right after Katie Chung finished painting the machine at the Kimball Arts Center, she went and painted the whole 360 room of the John Hancock or whatever. Incredible
I saw
mural.
that photo. I haven't met her, but I connected with her. Yeah,
that was a I think they're like doing a new thing now, replacing it with something else. But like that was such an unbelievable
what an
thing.
undertaking.
So gorgeous. Now like Alyssa Lowe off doing crazy, and she painted the like Wayfair building or whatever. So, like, see that mural, and there's this. That's the web. I mean, that's the thing. That's just. It's like incredible to see what people make. I don't remember what got me there. But
so Scent Rock His studio is down the street.
I'm a big fan.
Haven't had the pleasure to meet him, but his work is abundant in the city.
That's a perfect example of like once you see it, you see it.
Yeah.
Because his touch is on so many things, and it's on things old and new. Like he's doing work now,
right.
but you can also see his mark in stuff that was happening 5 years ago, 7 years ago, and that like kind of continuity in the story of a city feels special. Mm-hmm. Okay, so he's down the street.
Yeah, he's on the street. He's on 18th and Hoyne.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, he does and that's another funny one, like the Bull's Hat project. That's one where it's like, I swear, if you look at that list, it's like if I didn't know about those artists when they made that hat, I know about them now, and not because of the hat, because I bumped into it a million other places. Like there's just
this fabric.
Small, big city.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you experience that is there like a podcast community, or is this very much like a solo?
I'm aware of other podcasters.
Yeah.
But they're all doing their own thing.
Yeah.
Like there's restaurant tour, like hospitality Joiners is one.
I'm familiar.
77 Flavors of Chicago is
Okay.
another, where they visit all 77 neighborhoods and just share education little clips about
Cool.
it.
But there's not as much like a gathering sort of
terms
communal.
service. No, there's not really a gathering.
Okay.
I don't know. I mean, I think we're all so busy. Like if you were to ask me what my hobbies are, like it's this. Like if I'm not recording, I'm researching.
Yeah.
Or producing. So it's like this takes up a lot of my free time.
Yeah. I got to imagine you do it because you love it.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm curious about the work. I'm curious about the individual. And I have a feeling that I'll grow a deep appreciation of this person and the work that they're doing. And we'll probably experience it down the line.
How did the question come about? Because I feel like this whole podcast is sort of centered, feels like around on this idea that like by hearing and learning what other people are passionate about or care about, that there's something.
Because I didn't want to teach anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, ironically, this class. So it's like I wasn't making as much at a fire department. I was making $13 an hour, and I was making more from teaching as well as another job within a hospital. And so I made the decision to leave. But logistically at a fire department, you're there for 24 hours. So it's tough to hire a dog walker for 2 dogs. I was single at the time. And then you start teaching something you're no longer a part of, and you feel like an imposter. And so at the time, Gary Vaynerchuk, Tim Ferriss, like all big in media, and like Gary had this content creation model of creating long form content and cutting it into short form content, and
which is like everybody's saying that's where it's all going
right?
now. Yeah.
And
everybody's getting a YouTube channel.
So when I first started that, I would cut up like 5-6 clips. I would even tee you up to have a great Instagram clip and just like become a content creation machine. Whoa. And I really wanted this podcast to be an excuse to meet interesting individuals. And maybe like if I were to leave healthcare, how would I do it? Yeah,
so I guess that's like, so it's a question that you were having about your own kind of like...
And it actually stemmed from wanting passive income streams. So it's exploring, to me, very soulless options, whether it's like real estate or stocks,
drop shipping,
FBA, Amazon, all that stuff. And it's just like, there's no soul in this. And I didn't have the will to persevere through the number of iterations it takes to be successful in those vessels. So, but what I did like is creating merch, like hoodies and shirts, and having like your own personal brand type thing. And after all your friends and family support, no strangers are supporting, it's like, how do you build a brand? And then enter Gary Vaynerchuk and Tim Ferriss.
So interesting. That's so interesting.
So,
do you feel like the question has changed at all? Like,
very much so.
Okay.
It's more so you guys are obviously, individual representations of Chicago, which is very near and dear to me now, but also a sounding board for what I'm experiencing in my own life. So what has helped me persevere through the 6 years of doing this is just for selfish reasons.
Yeah.
And if anyone happens to tune in, great.
That's so nice. I mean, I think that's like,
Like I find a lot of joy and fulfillment in this for myself, and like which is a huge theme of today's episode, is like just to do things for yourself.
Yeah, I think that's what I think that it's really hard because the world that we live in right now feels like it's built on comparison. It feels like it's built on.
It's very privileged to be able to say that for sure, because not everyone has their bills paid and food over on the table and roof over their head. But if you can find a way to keep, and there's no right or wrong answer, but keep a day job and then have enough time to work on something that fuels you. And sometimes your job can fuel you, but sometimes your job is just simply a job and a means to pay the bills. If you can carve out enough time to work on something for yourself, then do that.
I have found that I think that like the people who struggle with the most ennui are not the people who like have to work to make the page. Like I think that there is this sort of ease and clarity about what you must do. If you must do it, you must do it. And some of the hardest working people who are in a position that feels like sometimes relentless, there's just this like lightness to it that I've always been really amazed by. And I think it's because you just adapt to the conditions of your own life. And like for them, they're happy to be able to do the thing. I think that so much of the struggle right now comes from, what do you do when all of your needs are met? It's like, that's such a privilege of like the world that we live in today. Like struggle is necessary.
From like survival to thrive.
Yeah, like struggle is necessary. And like if you don't need to struggle to get food on the table, if we don't need to, where do you choose to struggle? Like where do you choose to make things hard for yourself? And I think that I feel really lucky to be able to choose to make things hard for myself. I haven't always made that choice. And I think that like caring about something is what that breaks down to for me. Like that so many people who could do anything, who don't have to do anything, find themselves in unhappy situations. Yeah. And I think about like, just maybe none of us, maybe I wasn't trained, maybe I wasn't brought up to really, I was raised by people who didn't have all their needs met. Most people prior, like this is a crazy time. It's like an insane thing to be able to just like speed order milk to my front door and it shows up in 15. Like it's nuts. It's insane. And like the ease of that is going to require from us something different. And I think it brings me back to art. It brings me back to creativity, to the things that we do, not because we have to for corporeal survival, but because we have to for a bigger idea of survival. What are we? What are humans? And like, I think we're animals, and I think we're communal animals. And I think even if you're the asshole in the group who wants to take it all because everybody else is a sucker, like, I think that in a place like this, there's just enough care and enough people choosing to work hard at things that matter to them, not because they were told that it matters, but because they felt it and they experienced it. You choose to put time into putting these stories out, and I think that for me feels like what we all have to move towards. Otherwise, I feel like it'll be too easy to get lost. So much is easy now in a way that I think can remove a sense of purpose. Like having a garden in my backyard, it feels like a really loud experience because or like chefs, people who really do culinary shit. It's like, that's like that's a kind of care and love and connection to food that I think you can survive now without completely. I think you can have no reverence or honor or care or like attention towards food consumption, growth, any of it. And I think you can still eat and live.
Yeah.
And I think it's choosing, when you happen to be the type of person who loves a thing, it's like choosing to do it, choosing to love it, choosing to care about it. And
I'm fascinated why people do what they do, essentially, and why does someone care about the things they care about?
I think it's human nature. I don't think that there is, I think you got to be kind of like disconnected from what we are inside to like choose to properly do nothing. Like I just don't. I think people, you want to feel valuable and you want to feel connected, and in this world where we've all been really trained to be individuals, I think it's like, it's exciting for me. The reason that I was asking you about your origin question is that there's something that feels like it rhymes between why you do what you do and why I do what I do.
Yeah, I agree.
There's this view that I feel like I have of something really beautiful. And I'd like to talk about that thing as much as I can. I'd like to make the constraints of my life one where I get to be in that space.
Yeah.
as much as possible.
Yeah, and you've reclaimed that agency.
Trying to.
Yeah. And then putting other people on.
Yeah. And I learn so much. I mean,
I don't know how much space is in side practice. It's kind of tight in there, but your machine would be great in side practice.
So we've actually talked before.
Oh, okay.
Francis, right?
Almeida,
Yeah.
Francis Almeida.
I think Francis might be one of the people in the city that I admire like the most professionally. We haven't had a ton of personal communication, but he reached out and we had a phone chat where he was talking about maybe putting a machine in there. But I think what happened is I'm doing my own thing, but he's doing his own thing. He's not just a location looking for a machine. Like, he's building a universe. He's building an ecosystem. He's building an alternative. And I think that oftentimes the question is, like, this is what exists. How do you move outside of what exists? And I think the answer is always, we have to build the alternative first. And I watch him move through the world, and I hope he listens to this. I hope he gets to hear the fond things that I feel about him. But I think he's approaching that from both supporting like individual makers, artists, chefs, bagel pop-ups, whatever, but also entrepreneurs, people who are doing businesses. He's trying to create a language where you can be collaborative and community oriented and still, I don't know, move through like this business world that hasn't necessarily created a big framework for that being a value or a virtue. But he's definitely made it a value and a virtue in the way that he moves. I think that we will bump in. I have a strong feeling that there will be a future collaboration for us.
Yeah.
I watch very closely what he does at Side Practice. He just started a small business group of sort of like...
Yeah, I'm in that.
Okay, I'm thinking about joining now. I think about hopping in. I'll see you in there. And I think also the nexus of the other stuff that seems to connect to what he's doing. It's interesting to see there'll be something out in the world that I don't know is connected to him at all, but it'll have that sort of energy to it of wanting to create an invite, this energy of wanting to create a space, wanting to create an invite, wanting it to feel welcoming and warm. And then the person running it will sort of say, and then Francis, this and that. And I'm like, noted.
Yeah.
A lot of respect.
6 degrees Francis. Yeah.
I think I'm trying to get to the place where my own life and my own business is sturdy enough and I know enough what I'm doing that I can do that also. You know, I think that you have to have a lot of stability to spread yourself and branch out like that. And there's like a commitment that you make when you support other people in that way. And
I'm trying to think, like, when people are waiting in line to order their coffee, I mean, it's a tight space in there, but like I think there's an opportunity in the future.
I would just do a sticker machine just to be in that same space with. I just think, like, truly, I think what he's doing is really cool, and I think whatever I could do. But so much of my life right now is determined by capacity. Like, I feel pulled between like needing to live my own life and be there for my kid and move through my own existence. And
Hot Butcher's a little tight too. Hot Butcher, the old half-acre space on Lincoln.
Yeah, I think that also Reppin' Pins, like I was chatting with him at Reppin' Pins for a while about like doing stuff. I just feel like we've been sort of flirting with a collaboration for a minute.
Yeah, I mean, over here there's Novel Pizza, but that's also a little tight space. And then I'm excited the new bakery coming up, Del Sur.
Very excited about that. And then Drip Collective is also right
in West Loop. That's a decent space, but I think people are working in there. That I don't know, there's not a lot of waiting or standing around. I
just can't believe how much
And then Kanen's like a rice project, like a Spam musubi project.
I made musubi yesterday for my first time.
Delicious.
And then this morning for breakfast, I chopped it up in egg and rice.
Oh, yeah. So it's good leftover.
Oh yeah, the best. And I have one of those little kid like punch out things, so I made little Mickey Mouse and like hearts and stars. I felt very much like a super mom last night. I was like really plating up dinner. I was cutting seaweed into like little smiley face shapes. It was very fun. But I love musubi. I got to head over there. I think that the thing for me that brings up is that there's just like this desire. We live in sort of this like separated system now. There's like this big architecture of our world that feels, it's like so heavy and intense and guided by things that don't necessarily align with like how I understand the world or my life. And there's this anxiety I think that exists between the like large and the small. And I think that
I wonder if Guild Row would be a good spot for you.
Oh, I also love Guild Row and have been in that. My problem right now truly is just capacity. Like, we just can't make that many machines. Like, there's so many places that I would love to be. And also I feel a commitment to once I launch a machine in a place, like that location becomes part of like who we take care of.
Yeah.
And we don't have the structure right now to be able to do that for a lot of places at once, like quickly. But that's where I try and push back for myself against this idea that the only way to grow it is to like go, 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 go. I'm trying to just convince myself that we can open up exactly how many machines we can every year, and that maybe I could keep this thing alive and do it for the next 40 years. Sometimes I joke like, am I still going to be able to like find new art? Like how I'm going to need to turn to my kid. I'm going to need to turn to like to stay connected to what's happening. But I do hope that I get to do something like this for a long time. And I think that means like not running too quickly towards.
Yeah. You're not stretched thin.
Yeah. But I think about this sort of like bigger scale that this all big stuff that gets played out. And then I think about on this like city level, how we all operate with each other. Like I had this moment the other day where I was like, what would happen if like what would happen if Frances had access to the kind of funds that like this other part of the world had, this like big business, big money, whatever, playing a bigger game had? Like, what would it look like? I think all the time about like when I was hunting for an artist studio, even just earlier when you were talking about how at some point you'll need to expand your physical space, and that your thought about that is to find somebody to partner with and share space with. Like, instead of somebody owning a big building that they rent out to all of these artists, like what would happen if we just really had space? What if there was just a giant building in the city of Chicago that was just a collective? I mean, it's just so much to like navigate, and there's so much operations behind it. But that's like in the core of me, there's this desire for all of these things that are just doing it because they love it, because you love hearing these stories, and he loves supporting those businesses, and I love these artists and these places, and like it's just so much out of love that what would happen if we all could just and that I think is like that's the dream. That's why I keep moving forward, is because it's some far off future for me. If we get good enough at the things that we're all doing, maybe it's not a building, but like we'll all bump into each other. Like we'll all find the space where we intersect, and then in that we create our own world. Yeah. In that we create like a different kind of invite, and that stuff gets me really jazzed. Yeah. So jazzed. Just like the universe, like anything's possible.
I know, but for me, it's helpful to have friends that ground me as well, because I can go straight to space sometimes. And
where do you find those? Yeah. No, I'm kidding. I think like, that's probably good. I'm trying to learn how to not do everything. Like I love the idea. I'm
like 0 to 100.
I know, me too. But I think that's not a bad thing. No, I think it's like. I've been learning a lot about how to ground myself in my own body, because I'm finding that that's like the antidote. Like when my brain starts going a million miles an hour, I started doing this, like tapping my chest a lot, because I like read that like helps your autonomic nervous system. So when my brain's just like ideaing and I can't get it to shut off. Yeah.
Journaling that tends to help.
Yeah. I'm learning that the reading and writing part of my brain.
Just getting it out of my head.
Just like only works okay, which is making email really hard. Do you think there's a universe where like a person could run a successful business in 2025 and not email?
Well, you could automate that. Not automate it, but like send it to AI. Maybe get you a first draft.
I feel so freaked out by like the lack of questions being asked around AI that I struggle to use it.
It's a tool, and it like any tool, you can use it for nefarious purposes or great purposes.
I think what I struggle with is I feel like structurally we're not asking enough questions. Like, I think. I love new stuff. I love new ideas. I love new terrain. I think that it feels important to, if you know that something is if you've been talking a lot about what makes something good, it's important to also ask what the pitfalls are. And I feel like anytime that I'm hearing a lot of conversation about the good and the more, it makes me wonder who's having the conversation about the like downside and the less. I think about this with the internet a lot. Yeah. I love the internet. I'm not a big fan of like poo-pooing technology. I think like the youth is going to be just fine. I'm not worried about the kids. But I do think that give us another decade and we'll really have some answers to some questions that we forgot to ask.
Yeah. I mean, as far as technology as a whole, we're really reliant on good parenting.
Yeah.
I think there's some truth to the attention span that our generation has due to these devices and the level of validation we're seeking, and how immediate that validation can be sometimes, and what can happen if we don't get that validation.
Like as a parent, I don't feel like I'm going to figure it out, but like, I don't necessarily feel like I know what the answer to that is. Like I'm in a position to have to try and like guide a kid through it. And I feel like I have my own struggle. Like I don't even fully understand the impact that it has on like my own. Yeah. That I just feel like now that we're moving to the next level of it, my feeling is like, heck yeah, for innovation. And additionally, I would love to like hear what behavioral psychologists have to say. Like I would love to hear more about like what are
I know I'm awful with it. Like I could be editing an episode and then I'm like, oh, let me just doom scroll for 5 minutes. I'm like, what am I doing? Like, so it's, I see it in myself, and as a, every parent will have their own ways of parenting.
Or animals.
I know these days, coding is its own language, right?
Yeah,
so
totally.
That's something I never learned, and you could learn at any time, but it's not dissimilar to learning Spanish, German, or French back in the day.
I think the thing that I think about that like investment de-investment mechanism of like the more online we get, like I think you can have really substantial relationships online. Like I don't think that if
you're not like dismissing how meaningful a relationship can be.
I think it's just asking the question of, okay, but what is the difference? Like if they're not the same, it's not the same thing to have a friend online as it is to have a friend IRL. So advantages, disadvantages, there's going to be both.
Yeah.
And I think I'm like curious, not in the micro, not just you. Okay, I'm sure you love your online friend and you love your in-person friend. I think I'm curious on the macro, like if more of us start experiencing more of our friendship online, more of our connection online.
Like memes are a language.
Yeah, and if that energy all gets put in there, then where isn't getting that energy that used to? And sometimes I feel like the answer is like parks and playgrounds and libraries
malls.
And supermarkets and malls and like all of these places where we used to bump into each other. And like, again, I'm not saying it's inherently bad if we don't bump into each other, but just what do we lose?
I know.
And if there's something in there that I love, how am I going to move through the world to try and make sure that I retain that thing?
Yeah, if that's what you want.
Yeah. Well, the reading and writing part of my brain, like I said, only works okay. So like if I'm left to just message with people and like be on email, I'm just like never going to answer anybody. This is going to be so one-sided.
That's funny. In the Ask Chicago subreddit, someone who moved here recently said it's like they don't get approached. Like they were like, how do you meet people? Because people like, as far as like partners and companions and like dates, and like strangers don't approach each other. Whereas in New York, you're more likely to be approached by a stranger, apparently. And yeah, there was definitely a time when you didn't think there was a weakness of Chicago, and just like, oh, is that really the case? Like people.
We'll just wait till it's nice out and everybody comes out. Like
perhaps,
Like I do think that a lot of it is winter, like not holding winter to summer expectations.
But like, typically when exactly. When you go out, it's like people here, I guess, stick to the people that they went to the place
interesting.
with, right?
That I don't think that I haven't been out. I feel like I don't go out. It's been like a good decade,
same.
like probably 5-6 years since I like regularly went out. But I feel like 5-6 years ago I would go out and people would be approaching. But that was sort of again a representation of those communities. Like I would go out within the hospitality community
I'm sure there's
as somebody in the hospitality
industry
community.
stuff, and then even like neighborhoods within the city, right?
Totally. Like, hey, these are all the Rogers Park, whatever. Like I kept Pilsen, catch you at the same spots.
Right,
yeah. I think that's for sure. I do think that I am excited because I feel the warm up coming, and I'm once again reminded there are parts of my personality. There are things that I attribute to my personality in winter that are actually just weather things. Like I cannot wait for the warm up, because I think that the Chicago warm up is like one of the
summertime.
It's the greatest thing in the world. Like people are always like, why do you stay here? It's so cold in the winter. I'm like, well, you put in the time to make it through the winter so that you can experience what the coming into warmth in Chicago is like. There are very few, and I can always tell because it's like Groundhog's Day in Chicago. The version of it is there'll be one dude that walks outside of his house in shorts and a t-shirt.
Oh, yeah. Flip-flops,
yeah. He fully commits. He goes full summer, like right in the middle. I'm waiting to see that guy, because I think the togetherness and the community of it all, the collaboration does become a lot easier when we're like moving through shared spaces.
What was Friday Swim Club?
Yeah, that was amazing to watch that happen. That's like one of those things that I think the internet is so cool for. Just like, it's so cool to watch a wave happen. It's so cool to watch because you know that came out of love. Like
you
came out
knew
of
that
love.
there was this yearning for community.
Yeah.
Through a vessel of jumping in the lake, right?
And then it's the organic growth of it. It's I think they did a great job at getting the word out, but I also think that it was the sort of whispery nature of it, this sort of like
doing something cool.
It's not around, and then all of a sudden you're hearing about it from a bunch of different directions.
Yeah. So even despite social media, and I know a lot of their clips would take off.
Yeah, because they were great at editing. Oh,
yes.
Gorgeous.
But yeah, I think truly it was word of mouth.
Yeah, and they did some fun, cute things too. Like I think they really gamified the experience of, and I think about that a lot too. Like low stakes. When I talk about low stakes, my parents, the thing that took us to Japan was they were antique toy collectors. They were game and toy people.
Wow.
It's a kooky world. Like it was surrounded by people who like wrote Trivial Pursuit questions and like cut jigsaw puzzles. A very Arrested Development kind of crowd, and I think that invite to like play. And I think when I saw a swim club and I saw they were doing things like best mug, coolest float, and I thought, wow, what a great way to create a really communal experience and to like bring this other level of play into just getting together. That's one thing I did like a like gathering once and sort of knee-jerk called it a meet and greet, which I like so regretted later because then the whole thing was just centered around like, hello, I'm Steph. And that's so not how I want to be gathered. Like we had collage stuff, but I've been thinking a lot about like the framework of how we get together and
curating your own third space.
I think one of their great successes is that I think that this is my litmus question is, could a person by themselves who doesn't know anybody walk into this experience and feel like warm and welcomed? Could they feel like they have place here, even lightly comfortable and kind of lightly uncomfortable and kind of
recently
alone?
I'm like, there's a limit to the number of like guests at a dinner party, but there were like hundreds of people at the swim club.
But there is a limit to the amount of people at it. Like there is some sort of,
if you're trying to have meaningful conversations. Yeah, and like, what does that look like if it's just inviting people into your space? Mm-hmm. What does it look like if it's not dinner? What does that look like if it's like, what is the event for 20 people where everybody feels engaged and connected? What's the event for 50 people? Because I think that's what we're all kind of hungry for, and I think that's what Swim Club hit on is like they figured out how to accommodate, if the city had allowed them, a ton of people in a way that where they got that feeling. But it's not easy, and I think it's something that. I think this is going to be a really big summer in Chicago. I just have a feeling. I got a good feeling. There's a lot of really cool music coming out. People are dropping really great albums. There's new restaurants opening up. There'd been a big period of closure. I will say I am seeing a lot of store closes. I'm not seeing a lot of sort of like, feels like retail's having a challenging moment. But there are other industries that I think had a rough run over the last few years that I'm watching kind of come back.
I mean, who knows? But there's some vibration happening. There's at least some energy in there in those areas that I hadn't seen, and it makes me feel excited to like go back out there.
And participate and engage.
Be in it, because that's how it all started. It all started because I love consuming. I love consuming what the city has to offer. I love being able to see things and eat things and hear things and talk to people, and like that's such a joy and And when you live in a dense space and there's a lot of it, that's maybe the one kind of urgency that I'm down to buy into, is this urgency of I want to be in my own life. I want to be present, and I want to be soaking up the world that's around me.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean every day all the time, but
which like
go for a walk. That's what I mean.
Yeah, which reminds me of like, you don't know what you don't know.
You don't know what you don't know. And sometimes all you got to do is like knock on a door or learn one new word, and then like a whole existence opens up, and like coming back to like why I do anything, for the joy of it, for that feeling. It's like, that's a real source of joy for me. I get a real amount of joy from, I don't want to know. It's the potential of, I could learn that. I could do that. I could, it's like moving towards. I want to be moving towards
how much
something.
more there is to know.
Yeah, like we're too destination focused. Even when I was growing up, it's like, whatever. What was the thing? It was like 2 kids, married, straight couple, white, suburbs, white picket fence,
Right.
a dog, a cat, some sort of idea of destination.
And when you get there, then
what is that even? Like, well, that's not a place. You can't land there. That's not you still exist as a full human being. Like, you're having every experience. Like, there just is no destination. There isn't a landing point. The whole thing is a journey. There isn't. You'll stop when you're dead. You know, like, that's the end of it. The end isn't success. The end isn't.
It's tricky because I think there's merit to having a goal.
Totally.
Right? And call it what you want, a destination, a goal. But be fluid enough to understand that goalpost can be moving, and to not get too lost in the weeds of the journey.
Like, maybe it's a semantic thing, but I think like goal and destination feel different, because destination for me feels like
it's it, like the finality of
it.
Yeah,
like there isn't this sort of sense of like, well, then what happens after? Well, there is no after. You've landed at the destination. That's the final. There's a finality to it.
Yeah.
That I think I feel uncomfortable
in
with.
in the sense of having a direction, some direction to your journey.
Yeah, but not having I think that I feel the same way about actual travel. Like, I think if you're taking a road trip and you're like, okay, I need to get from here to this city in Michigan. Sure. I think you can get in your car and you can drive there, and that's one journey. But I think that the other one is like, you get in your car and you head in that direction, and if you pass Mars Cheese Castle, you stop. And if you pass,
100%.
I think.
But why that direction in the first place?
Because you have a goal. Different than a destination, maybe.
Okay. I see what you mean.
I think I just, again, it doesn't
No,
actually.
I see what you mean.
I think that I want to move myself away from anything that makes me feel like there is a right or a want, like that there is this sort of singular, like you should this, or you got to get here. Like, okay, maybe you get to your destination and it looks different than you thought. Does that make it like less of your destination? Like, does that,
no.
I just think that the things that leave space for it to be different than I thought, for the path to be different, like, because I just don't know. And I think we have a crisis of certainty in our culture, and I think that the more space that can be left
in the uncertain,
certain in the change, certain of the uncertain, like that willingness, the vulnerability, it's like all of that for me. That's the meaty part. And you gotta like have a goal. You gotta figure out some. That makes me think about success. Like, how do you? It's like it's a real interesting one for me.
And that's an evolving concept, right?
I think
we think about success differently in our 20s as we do in our 30s and 40s.
God.
And then
success in my 20s.
Talk about being a parent now. Like, success will look differently.
Completely different. There was an article a long time ago, like some sort of non-scientific study that they'd done trying to understand people who self-define as successful. They asked, I'm going to make up numbers, but they asked like 8,000 people, do you think that you're successful? Of those 8,000 people, let's say 800 people self-checked that they were successful. They asked those people to write out, let's say, 8 reasons why they felt like they were successful. They tried to distill that down to sort of commonalities. And they found a bunch of work-related commonalities, like a clear understanding of your work and the way that it connects to a larger goal. Self-efficacy in the way that you attend to your own work, blah, blah. But there were some other ones that were just about like goal-setting mechanisms. Like, it's about people who feel successful are people who plot the long-term goal, but actually they check in with that every now and then, but they sort of ignore everything forward up to that. And they kind of just pay attention to the today and tomorrow of it. And that those people tended to feel more successful than people who which I so get. That makes so much sense to me.
Yeah.
You have a goal, you get caught up in what you got to do in 2 months, but you haven't done the 5 steps it takes to like get to the tomorrow part. So I think a lot of times about how I create the constraints for feeling successful for myself. Like what do I create as my own way of waking up and feeling successful? Yeah. And I think that that's where I get away from destinations.
Yeah, that makes sense.
That the more that I allow the stuff that I mess up and the learning and the growing and the uncomfortable part, the more that I can convince myself that that's the goodness.
Yeah. That it's okay.
Yeah, that I'm okay, that I'm safe.
Yeah.
And that I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing. This is how it's supposed to feel. It's supposed to feel frustrating. It's supposed to feel hard. That feels like a real gift that I can give to myself in a world where I want to keep growing.
I love that.
Yeah. They're mostly just things I tell myself.
But they work.
Yeah, enough. It's like some of that, like, speaking beyond where you are, like, okay, if I just start calling myself a morning person, maybe I'll be a morning person. Sometimes it works.
Which is funny because we kind of started the episode with manifesting.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's all connected. Like, I think we're all just trying to put like our language to it, but I do think they're systems, and the systems are interwoven, and yeah, it's all super connected. And I'm never surprised when something ends up feeling cyclical. And often grateful.
Yeah.
Sometimes there's like a nice comfort.
Definitely a through line, yeah.
And I think like for me, maybe that's like to just bring it back to the vending machines. Like maybe that's really the reason that vending machines make the most sense to me, is because they're just not static like a lot of other things are. It feels like the whole world could change tomorrow, and I could figure out what to do with what I have. You know, there's a safety for me in the way that they are also modifiable, changing things.
I love that for you.
Yeah. Kind of feel the same way about a podcast, you know, like no matter what goes, like you have you and your interest and your intrigue, and then you have the ability to do this thing, and that feels really sturdy to me.
Yeah. I mean, I agree. I'm not closed to the idea of monetizing the podcast, however that might look, but I also don't want anyone telling me what to do or talk about or who to talk to. So I don't know. Yeah, I do it for me. So for now, that was what carries me through. But
I think that's the best reason.
Yeah.
I mean, there was a moment where everybody really wanted me to franchise Good Things Vending.
Oh wow!
And that was really intense.
That's interesting. I mean, that would give someone enough ownership to buy into the process. Yeah, that would give you team members.
I would make a lot of money, and then my job would be
managing and
telling people yes or no to stuff. And
it would take you away from...
Neither of those things are what neither of those things make me wake up happy with my life. I'm not saying they're bad things, but like they're just... I know me well enough to know that it's the serious hospitality job. Like I just didn't like that version of myself. And I think that's the bigger money grab. I think in a lot of ways that does answer people's wants to sort of like get involved. But I think that I don't want to like possess the model in the way that would require. Like my feeling about it is like, I want to support.
What's interesting is like, what's stopping them from starting their own?
Because it's intimidating, and a lot of people are scared to take that leap, and I think that's why I'm trying.
They want your structure.
Yeah, so I'm trying to offer up as much as I can. It's like slowly building, but I do some mentoring calls with people. There's like a little bit of a community on Discord of folks who are chatting. Taylor from the Venderia has a course that like I'll point people in the direction of. I send out a ton of information via a mailing list, like to all these folks who are interested. The goal at some point is to turn that information into like a downloadable ebook. But my feeling is that what people see of Good Things Vending is a vending machine project. Totally is that. It's an art vending machine project. But what it really is a love letter to Chicago. It's a connection to all of the people that I'm around in this community that feels like it raised me. It feels like it's been really generous with me. And now this is sort of my way of being able to participate back. And I couldn't go to another city and do this with the kind of confidence and integrity that I feel like I'm able to bring to this project. I would be an outsider there. And if you want to do it in your city, then you're the best person to do it. Like I can't be the yes or no person for your... Yeah. And each one has its own flavor, you know, and like that flavor is a product of the collaboration. And I don't ever want to get to a place where I'm trying to create a single
just commercialize
Good Things Vending
and generalize
taste.
It. Yeah.
I want it to, you know, I could imagine doing like a fun pop-up project. Like if there was a business in Michigan that wanted to do a like bring Chicago artists, like pop-up machine for a minute. You know, if there was something else that rhymed or felt good that I felt like I could do, that I could take care of and foster, then I'm totally open. I'm not saying a hard no, but I don't want like a Good Things Vending franchise with like other people operating like their own. That's not.
That makes sense. Double down on why you started and who you are.
Yeah, it's just not a job I want. Like, it's just not the job I want.
Yep. Yep. Don't compromise.
Yeah, I want to have fun. And
Good.
I think like in order to retain a life where I have a lot of joy and a lot of play and a lot of fun, that means that
You're going to say no to certain
I
opportunities.
can't say yes to everything.
Yeah.
You can't.
Yeah.
It'll kill me. It'll kill the business.
We can chat for hours. I
know,
feel
it's gonna
like.
go on forever.
Where can people find you?
Good Things Vending Machines
Okay.
are in 7 locations in the city of Chicago, with an 8th launching probably next month.
Okay.
We're at the Chicago Cultural Center. We're at Kimball Arts Center, Kaiser Tiger. We're at Garfield Park Conservatory. We're at the Way Out. We're at the Owl. We're at, did I say Kimball Arts Center already?
Yeah.
Okay. Did I get them all? Find out.
Any
I'll find out on listening back.
Are you not off color?
Off Color. So that
Okay.
Metropolitan's machine got moved to Off Color.
Gotcha,
That was a
gotcha.
beautiful. They were like friends.
Oh,
so they
great.
sort of like, and kept the mural, and they've really honored the like origin of that machine. Yeah. And then Revolution's going to be launching.
That's so interesting that they because they're they had to close the original location.
Metropolitan. Off Color.
Rev.
Rev. Yes.
Yeah.
Weird timing.
Yeah.
Totally weird timing. A sad loss.
Yeah.
Sad loss, because that was amazing.
I don't know if that was their first location, but
Definitely felt like their like big, like
it was because I've
a big deal location.
Shot a wedding there, and like the food was phenomenal, and the beer's good, but like I think beer right now is oversaturated.
I'm surprised they closed. I'm surprised.
I'm surprised too.
I'm surprised they closed.
They had a great run.
They
but
did.
It's one of the early beer, the earliest breweries in Chicago.
I feel like for a minute they were really defining the view that other people had from outside of Chicago of Chicago. There was like a moment where I felt like that name had this sort of external connection to Chicago. I feel really grateful to be in their space, because they were one of the like early, when I was sort of envisioning the kinds of places I'd like to be,
place,
of course.
yeah.
I mean, like, of course I'm going to think about Revolution. So excited to be there. We also have a new website, new branding.
Nice,
That was a
that's
really
exciting.
fun project. Worked with the local team, Segue. And so the website now has like a small web store, which once we're moved into the studio, I'm going to get more stuff up there. And we're going to have like
good.
monthly drops. But there's like some merchy things up there.
That's reminding me of Here Market, like an online platform for like sauces and chili pastes and jams
cool.
and snacks, but I don't think there's a physical brick and mortar, but they are a platform for local makers to sell their goods through.
Wow. So
but I think that's on consignment as well.
the long-term goal for me, and like I won't say too much because I don't want to hold
Whatever you want.
dreams, but the vision for me is that I believe the vending machines are having a moment. Like I think that I think it's not just like, you'll see it when you go to art markets. People have capsule machines and sticker machines. Like vending machines are just being utilized in a new way in our country, a way that we've never really tapped into before, which means that people are going to need more vendable stuff. And chips and candy bars are vendable, but other items are also vendable. So my goal is to eventually have like a back-end web store that has goods that all are sort of guaranteed to fit in a vending machine. That way, if you're operating a snack vending machine, an art vending machine business, and you want to put in mystery socks or some sort of cool coloring book, like you can buy from the Good Things Vending store, and there's sort of this guaranteed compatibility with vending machines. But also just like as a consumer, you could buy it, or if you had a store, you could buy it. But to always be speaking within like the language and the size of vendable items. Yeah, so like now the website and all of that. And that also has more info for folks who want to learn about doing their own vending machine projects.
Wow.
There's a Discord, which I'm sort of bad at, but I'm trying to figure out how to participate in community there. And that's been really fun as it grows.
Like you're hosting the Discord?
Yeah, like it's a Good Things Vending Discord channel.
Great.
What I understand about Discord is that eventually, hopefully, it kind of like
Takes it like its own life.
yeah, it gets its own kind of energy behind it. But
Yeah.
right now, it's just we all sort of chit chat on there and like share.
That's cool. We just started one for the class too.
Okay, nice.
I never thought I'd ever want to be in charge of like or moderate a group chat of students, and but it has taken a life of its own. Like students would answer each other's questions, or some of my
Yeah.
instructors would hop in and answer. So it's not like I have to keep an eye on everything either.
I think that's the goal for me on this one. I feel like I need to put a little bit more behind it to get it there. I feel like it needs a little bit more attention maybe. But yeah, I'm excited for what that could mean. And then also the physical space. I got keys last week, and it's just a little studio, but it'll hold all of the inventory, and it'll be a place where people can come by and workshop their goods in person.
In the city?
Yeah, it's in East Garfield Park, really
Okay.
close to where I used to work. And yeah, right on Chicago Ave. And
Yeah.
I think it'll be a great opportunity there's just a lot of love and a lot of energy and a lot of willingness to connect. And it's been hard to do that working out of my house.
Sure.
And I think the biggest thing is like, I hope that it means more events, nothing major, but like nights for folks to sort of workshop stuff or craft together. Or,
I love that.
Yeah, that's the hope for me. And then hopefully a few new more machines this summer. We're talking to some folks, and I'm hoping to get a couple more out.
Awesome. Steph, it was a pleasure.
I really appreciate it. It's so nice. I think it's really life affirming to get into conversations about why we do what we do. And I'm grateful anytime that I get the chance to like talk about the things that I love and care about, because that hits a really deep part of my self, of my desire to like wake up and do anything. So thank you for creating a setting to just kind of like live in that for a minute.
Yeah, it's an honor.
fun.
It's a pleasure. My appreciation for the makers and creators of Chicago just grow deeper with every episode. And so, I can't wait to go to a certain location simply because of a vending machine. It's going to be great.
Highest compliments.
It's going to be great.
Highest compliments. Well, thank you. And I can't wait to hear like the other conversations that come out of this.
Yeah. I mean, who knows? Like some of those things might end up in your machine. It's just like this.
I hope so.
The rhyming, right? The rhyming.
The door opening. I hope it's like I hope it's always the beginning of the conversation. I always want to be having the beginning of the conversation.
Yeah. Okay.
At the end of the conversation.
Right.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having me.
All right, everyone. Thank you. We'll tune in next time. Until next time, we'll see you. Bye.
Bye.
Hey, what's up, guys? Thanks for tuning in. If you like this video, you might even like this video. If you haven't subscribed, please subscribe right here. I'll see you in the next one.